Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared with my lovely wife, Kara.
Hello.
And we are live, ladies and gentlemen, live on Neeves Knives. This is a Bang Gang members only live. If you are watching it, you can watch, but you're not going to be able to comment unless if you're a Bang Gang member, or if you donate. I guess that way you can comment if you really want to. But today we are going to be talking about convex edges, possibly the most important type of edge to learn how to sharpen. And to be honest, it's the most easiest edge to sharpen as well. But there's a difference between properly sharpening a convex and just getting a convex edge. So most people are going to, when they learn how to freehand, are going to start convexing just naturally, because it's very difficult for a person to hold a consistent, to the precise degree angle over and over and over and over. And since it's very difficult, that's why most people wind up convexing, because even though they're pretty much holding the right angle, their little tiny bit of movements are convexing the edge. So most people, when they first learn how to freehand, are going to be convexing the edge. Now, some people might say, you might hear this in the community, that all freehand edges are convex. That is false. That is absolutely untrue. It's just very difficult to learn how to do a V-ground freehand edge. It does take a lot of practice. So since most people, when they first start off freehanding, they're going to convex anyways, it's going to be the easiest way to start off. Now, properly convexing your edge is a difference, and we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how to properly do that. Now, why is it the best? So this is why I would say it's the best. So, and first of all, let's show what the difference is really quick. So the difference between a V-ground edge and a convex edge. So here is a V-ground edge, and we're talking about the edge bevel that you are sharpening on your knife. Flat edge, or flat angles, exact angles on the edge bevel till you get to the apex of the tip. Now, a convex is where the edges are slightly rounded before it gets to the apex. Now, there's a very convex edge, which would be the toughest of edges, like kind of like an axe. Think about an axe. So your edge would be similar to the way an axe is made. Hey, we got a new member, 2 new members, Robert Oak and Tyler Payne. Thank you for joining the Bang Gang squad.
Also, hello everybody that's joined. Thank you for being members if you already are one. Hello.
So there's very convex, which would be a very tough edge. Then there's slightly convex. Now, slightly convex is going to be, in my opinion, the best quality edge you can put on a knife, or pocket knife, specifically pocket knife. Now, the reasons why is because the main difference between this convex and this V-grind is toughness. So this is going to be sharper, right? Why will this be sharper? Well, because right behind the very apex, you know, the part of the edge that you touch with your fingers, is thinner behind the very tip of the apex. This is a little bit thicker, so it's not going to be quite as sharp. However, when it's a slight convex, you can get it to practically the same thickness right behind the apex as the V-grind, but because it slightly starts contouring or rounding, it brings up a lot of toughness. This is going to help your edge be tougher. So if you accidentally hit something, smack something, we got another new member, Mocked Clown. Shout out to the Bang Gang squad. Thank you guys for becoming members. You guys are awesome, man. I do appreciate all the support. But it makes it to where it's going to be tougher. So you're going to get really good edge cutting performance, edge retention, all that good stuff, while not making your edge fragile. Now, another thing is that especially with low angles. Now, if we do a V grind at 15, 13 degrees per side, that's an extremely low angle. That will make this edge, a V ground edge, very fragile. but it's super, super sharp, super, super slicey. The lower the angle, the sharper your edge, the better cutting, even the more edge retention. But remember, there's a difference between edge retention and toughness. Edge retention basically is where how long your edge will last through cutting through regular stuff, as long as it doesn't hit anything that could damage it. Toughness is how much can it handle abuse, how much can it hit and without fracturing. Yes, baby.
Matt Clown wants to know, do you sharpen cigar cutters?
Well, I have not, but
How would you even do that?
I could, but I have not. No, but you definitely could. It wouldn't be too hard. Yes.
Also, okay, two things really quick. Tyler Payne says, "Yo, Jared, I just bought my first knife in 8 months yesterday.
Nice.
I saw that the Ferrum Forge Archbishop 3.0 was back in
Yes,
stock,
it is.
so I picked one up. I know you said you wanted one a while ago.
I got one. I got a regrind on mine. I actually last night in yesterday's live I linked it. So that if people wanted to get it, because it's back in stock now. But yeah, I sent mine to BGM Knives, and he put a regrind on mine. So I got a super deep hollow grind on mine. I'm loving it. It's super thin behind the edge, about 10 to 15 thousandths behind the edge. It's amazing. But with the factory one, it's a flat ground knife, and it is a little robust and thick. Yeah.
And then Robert Oak says, Kara/Jared, do you mind jotting down the degrees on the different styles on your paper there?
Okay, so there's really no, it's like kind of a roundabout thing right here, but we're going to get into degrees right now, actually. So when you have a super low angle and it's a V grind, any low angle on V grind or convex, that's where your sharpness is going to go up, your edge retention is going to go up, and your ability to cut. It's going to have the highest cutting performance the lower the angle. Also, the bigger the edge bevel will be. So you see how, like on this is actually a convex edge on this Freeman right here. And if you look, you see how big the edge bevel is? It's a nice big edge bevel because because it's thick behind the edge. Now, the thicker the edge is, the bigger the edge bevel, and the lower the angle. So, like, let's say this is a 20-degree angle, which I don't know what angle it is, but let's say it's 20 degrees. If I dropped it down to 15 degrees, it would be even bigger. Right now, if I dropped it down, or if I raised it up to say 30 degrees, it would be smaller. But at 30 degrees, it would not be as sharp and it would not cut as well as a 15-degree edge bevel. Now, the reason why a slight convex is going to be the best is because you're going to be able to lower your angle to say 15 degrees per side, or whatever degree you want to, 17 degrees per side, and because, sorry, let me back up. When you drop it down to 15 degrees or however low you go, when it's very low, yes, the sharpness increases. Yes, the cutting performance increases, but the toughness goes way, way down. It becomes very, very fragile. So I want you to imagine this really quick. If this is, say, a 13-degree edge bevel, and I'm just, this is just a guess here of the, think about how fragile that would be compared to, say, a 25-degree angle, right? Sorry, let me back this up. This is going to be far, far tougher than this, right? Of course. So how can we get the 15-degree or 13-degree, whatever the super low angle is, to increase its toughness so we're not going to make it super fragile so it just chips? We convex it. So we make it to where the angle is still super low, but now it's convex. So the edges are slightly rounded just a little bit, right? So that's what a convex edge. Now, certain steels, right? Certain steels are going to be more fragile than other steels. So those would be steels you might possibly want to put, a convex edge on, especially if you're going to put a low angle on it. Now, of course, if you do a super high angle, yeah, you're not going to have to really worry about it because fragile isn't going to be your issue. What's going to be your issue is it's not going to be very sharp and it's not going to have a lot of edge retention or good edge retention. So the next thing. So different kinds of blades, right? So thickness behind the edge is a huge factor. The thinner the edge is, the more fragile it is. The thicker it is, the more robust it's going to be. So the more robust it's going to be, the lower the angle you're probably going to want to put on it. Even though your edge bevel might be nice and big, it'll increase your cutting performance massively, right? Now, if it's super thick behind the edge, convexing might not be that big of an issue, but you still are going to want to learn how to do it. Another blade that's really good to do on is a Tonto. So if you guys know the Chris Reeves Tonto, it's the front end of it is convexed, just like the Grimsmo Norseman. That Tonto, it's convexed. The straight edge, or in the case of the Norseman, it's a recurve. That's a V ground. Then the actual Tonto part of it is convex. So certain Tontos, okay, another one, dual grinds, where, you know, kind of like the Chavez's, things like that. You know, up in the front, it's going to be really thick. So you're going to want a super low angle. And in order, because that front end is where you're supposed to do abuse, that's where you might want to put a convex edge. Now, fixed blades, especially like EDC fixed blades, even though you're mostly cutting with it, it's something you might be a little bit tougher on than maybe your pocket knife. So that might be another one that you want to put a convex edge. Like I said, though, most people when they learn how to freehand, they're going to convex no matter what. But what we're talking about today is properly convexing. Now, let's get to it. So let's talk about two different ways to do a convex, right? We're going to mostly focus on the second one because, in my opinion, it is the easiest way to do a convex. But the first one, you can get a base, you can lay your knife on there, and you can freehand sharpen two hands just like this, okay? So the way I like to do it is you're going to have to pay attention to the motions in my hand right now. So as I'm coming across the stone, I'll lift this way. And then on my second pass, I'll round it like that. So what the difference was is I went this way, and the other one I went this way. So since I'm doing two different ways, my angle is slightly moving like this as I'm going through it, which is convexing. But that, in my opinion, is the most difficult way. Here is the easiest way. Stone in hand. Take your stone, regardless if it's a little stone. If you are doing recurves, you might want a thin stone, right? Learning how to sharpen in hand, I think, is the first way you should learn how to sharpen. Why do I say that? Well, because if you're in the field, right? If you're in the field, you might not have a base. You might not have even a flat surface to lay a stone on. So knowing how to pick up a damn rock or whatever you have and hold it in your hand while you're holding the other knife and sharpen like this, it is crucial. And I think it is the most beneficial because over time, what you're going to learn, stone in hand, blade in hand, learning how to sharpen like this is going to teach you more than anything. Go ahead.
You sort of answered it, but Robert asked, probably a dumb question, but
no dumb questions here.
How do you accomplish rounding the edge?
Okay, so we're going to get to that because I'm going to show you exactly how to round the edge. But basically, what you're doing is, so if you just naturally try to hold your angle, you're probably going to round it no matter what, because you're not going to be a robot and be able to hold it perfectly. It takes a lot of time. Like, yes, I can do it now, but it took me a very long time to be able to do it, to be able to perfectly hold an angle and repeat it. Because it's not about being able to go across the stone one time. It's about being able to go across the stone 1,000 times that exact same angle to get a V grind. So since you're probably going to have a little bit of fluctuation in your angles going across the stone, you're going to change your angles a little bit as you're doing that, and it's going to convex. But basically, it's just basically trying to hold your angle as well as you possibly can and go across the stone every single time around that same angle. Now, convexing, there's different ways to do it. Like I said, there's the other way, which you'd almost do like a stair step effect where you're kind of changing it. But this way, I'm going to show you guys, this is going to be the best and easiest way to do it. So you get the stone, lay it in your hand. Find the roundabout angle that you are going to want. Now, I've talked about how to find the angle you're going to want. And I've talked about how it's not crazy important because you're changing the angle anyways. So as long as you pick an angle and you can repeat whatever comfortable angle is for you when you're holding it, that's fine. Pick that angle and stick with it as long as you replace the old edge bevel with that new angle completely. But another way is, you lay your knife down on the stone, you look for the shadow under it, and you raise the blade up until the shadow goes away under the knife. Then you can say that's your angle, because now you're hitting your apex. But you can pick whatever angle you want, because if I lay it down to 15 degrees, that's going to be like right here. 17 degrees is going to be like right here. 20 degrees is going to be like that. 25 degrees, so on and so forth. So you're going to have to pick your angle. But whatever angle you pick, try to stick with it. Now, this is how you're going to convex. The stone is in your hand, right? You have this to move, right? You can move your stone, and you can move your edge, your blade. Try to use the entire stone, but as you're coming across, you can hold your plate firm in hand and bring your edge across. You're going to go back and forth, not just towards you, back and forth, back and forth. Now I can also move my stone. Now I'm not even moving my blade now. So now when I integrate both of them, I know this seems difficult, but it's actually a lot easier than doing the other thing. So got my angle, that's my angle. Now I'm going to do a little bit of both motions. I'm going to move my stone and my blade at the same time, kind of intertwined. There's going to be times where I might stop moving my stone and just move my blade. Then there's going to be times I might leave my blade a little still. Now, I don't want to just do one pass and then check. I want to make sure I do quite a few passes in order to see some results before I look at what's going on. So I'm going to do about 20 passes back and forth. So it's kind of like 40, but then I'm going to look at my results and I'm going to see. So like right now, I got a lot of my edge bevel hit, but I'm missing from here to here. I can see that. You guys are not going to be able to see it on the camera. Maybe not, but I'm going to try. Can I see that? A little bit. So the very, very apex from here to here is not being hit. And I can see that because I can see where my stone is hitting the back of the edge bevel. So I'm going to continue holding that exact angle. Now you can also put your finger on your spine. That can kind of give you a little bit of stability. You don't have to. Definitely do what works for you. If holding your blade is like this better for you or like this, just do what works best for you to where you can hold that edge bevel or edge angle. Sorry. Now I can do back and forth motions like this to get that spot, but I want to blend always. So if I work at the heel right here, so right now I'm kind of putting a little bit more pressure down here towards the heel. That's fine. But I have to blend it now. I can't just say, okay, there, I hit it. I have to hit that spot and then blend it by hitting the entire edge bevel. The most difficult part is going to be matching the other side. The one cool thing about doing it like this, though, is that you can change. So when I switch sides, I can look at where I'm hitting and what's going on and raise up if I need to. Remember, this is low angle. The higher you raise the spine of the blade is going higher and higher in the angle. Okay? The higher the angle, the lower on the edge you will be hitting. The lower the angle, so right now I'm going to drop it down. The lower the angle, the farther up the blade you're going to be hitting. I'm going to repeat that. The higher the angle, so this would be considered a high angle. This would be considered a low angle. The higher the angle, the closer to the very tip of the edge you will be hitting. The lower the angle, the farther back up the blade you will be hitting. So if you're hitting all the way up here or something, well, then you got way too low of an angle. If you're only hitting the very tip of the edge, then you got too high of an angle. You want to get that balance to where you can hit the back of the edge bevel. You want to start basically at the back of the edge bevel and get it to work its way down. If you start at the very tip of the edge and work your way up the edge bevel, then you're changing the angle to a higher degree. That's why I always try to say start at the back of the edge bevel when you're sharpening, meaning like when you start sharpening, where you see the scratch pattern, you want it to start at the top of the edge bevel. That way you can work your way down to the very apex. That means you have a nice low angle. Low angles are good, usually. Now, after a while of doing this, you're going to get a feeling. You're going to notice you're holding your angle. You will feel you're holding your angle. By the way, guys, Kara's going to link a bunch of sharpening supplies in the description here in a second.
How did you know I was already doing that?
Oh, are you?
In the comments. I didn't put them in the description.
So put them in the description. Yesterday's live, I linked a bunch of stuff for you to do that. So go in yesterday's live and copy and paste
all those and put them in this.
Well, not the whole thing, but just start at the sharpening or like the KPL or whatever.
Right. Hey, really quick before you start talking again. Never mind.
Okay. Remember, guys, if you guys have important like little questions like how do you see a burr, things like that, go watch my step-by-step freehand knife sharpening. I teach a lot in that. Try to go through my sharpening playlist because you're going to learn a lot through that so that when we get to things like this, you're kind of caught up in some of the phrases. I can tell you if you have a question right now, but I'm just saying it helps a lot if you're caught up just a little bit. Yeah.
Bama Knife Guy, he wants you to know that he's silently watching you from the shadows.
I like that.
Because he's not a member.
Oh, well.
But, I mean, he's watching.
Okay.
Probably through the real window.
Probably.
Yeah.
His loss. He's
going to be one by tomorrow, though.
Oh, awesome. So, right now we are changing our angle on this. So when I originally started, my edge bevel was probably, it looks like about 25 degrees. It's a high edge angle. Not something I think is acceptable, especially when we have such a beautiful sharpening choil. Look at that sharpening choil. That is a beautiful choil. The plunge grind ends all the way up here. So I have all of this life to sharpen away. Now, remember guys, if you guys want to know how to do a V grind edge, not a convex, I teach that too through my playlist. I show a lot of videos teaching that and how to hold your angle exactly in moving across the stone. And I do it with a little trick I do with a line on my finger. And you hold the spine of the blade to that line and you bring it across the stone like this. That way you can hold that exact angle going across. But today we're doing convex, which is, like I said, very important. So started with 25 degree angle. Now we are going back to, it's about, let me just check it really quick.
Where'd you want me to go below?
We're going back to about 17 degrees per side. Maybe a little bit.
KPL and down?
Let me see. Go to the Amazon affiliate down. Okay. All right, guys. So we're going to put some sharpening supplies in the description. If there's one that we're missing, Kara's going to grab an affiliate and put it in. This is the Atoma 140. The Atoma 140 is a hyper-aggressive diamond plate. Now, that's a good and bad thing. Well, I don't think it's bad. You guys might, just a little bit. This thing hogs off metal fast. It sharpens very fast. However, it does also break in. So mine's about 300 grit now, but when I first started, it was 140 grit. At 140 grit, it will cut metal and steel, any super steel, super fast. But it does eventually break in. Mine, like I said, is about 300 grit now, so it doesn't cut as fast as it used to. Remember, when you're going like this, because we're convexing, it's not too big of a deal if you fluctuate a little tiny bit, but try to hold your angle exactly, because even with you trying to hold it exactly, you're going to get a little bit of movement. Even if you don't feel the movement, you're getting some movement. So just try to hold it as good as possible. Since you're holding the stone in your hand and the knife in your hand, you're going to convex, trust me. You can do it sideways. Let's look at this. Okay, so we got most of the edge bevel, but we're missing a little bit right in here. So we're going to get that now. And then we will flip. So we want to work on one side until we get our scratch pattern from the top of the edge bevel all the way to the tip of the apex. Top of the edge bevel to the tip of the apex, from heel to tip. And we want to, if there's little tiny parts, where you can get, on the next stone, or, in a little bit, you can kind of save a couple little pieces, but usually you want to get 100% of the edge before you go to the next side. Unless if you're going to do a thing where you go back and forth on the first stone. You can do that if you want. But either way, you don't want to move to the next stone until you are 100% done on both sides. 100%, not 95%, not 98%, 100%. Your first stone, you should basically be able to, once you're done with your first stone, be perfectly fine with that edge. That edge should be 100% acceptable to do whatever you need to do with your knife. And I say that because, remember, the first stone is what sharpens your knife. Every stone after is just changing the finish. That's it. Changing the finish and the grit in the bite, basically the sawtooth at the edge. Remember, the apex is the tip of the edge, the part that first cuts you if you cut yourself. That is the apex, the very, very tippity tip of the edge. So if you hear me say tip or apex, that's what I'm talking about. Unless I'm talking about the tip of the knife. Not a lot of pressure. You can put a little bit of pressure because it's the first stone, but you don't want to put any more pressure than you can maintain an angle at. If you can't go across that stone 30 times in a row without fluctuating and moving at that pressure, then you're pushing too hard. So you can put pressure as long as you can hold that angle at that pressure.
Okay.
Because the more you put pressure, the more you're probably going to want to push your spine lower. So, okay, we got a burr, but we are missing a couple little spots. So we're going to continue to work on this until we flip. Yes, baby. What's up, Germany?
Robert, okay, I have two things for you. Robert says, Jared, on these passes, are you switching on each pass, or one pass multiple and then switch to the other to get the convex? I think I read that weird.
Can I read it again?
Why don't you just read it? Because maybe you understand it better.
Jared, on these passes, are you switching on each pass, or one pass multiple and then switch to the other to get the convex? I'm not sure what you mean. I'm working completely on one side, and I'm dragging across. I'm setting the blade on the stone at the angle I want on this knife. So once I got my angle, and I want to make sure it's an angle that I know and I can repeat. I want to be able to pick it up and set it back down approximately at that angle. Okay. So if you need an indicator, like maybe looking at the heel, and just remember like what it looks like, or if you have a feeling, or maybe you can use the tip of your finger, and kind of judge it. Like you see how the tip of my finger right now is hitting the stone while the edge is hitting the diamonds. I can use that as an indicator, but just make it to where you can set it back down at that angle. Now, I'm going back and forth. So I'm pushing from heel. So I'm starting at the heel. Right now, the first part only the heel from here to here is on the stone. And as I drag it across the stone, I will continue going up the blade. So if you watch right now, the heel, which this is the heel, is on the stone. As I go across, I am lifting my elbow to hit the tip. And then right here, I'm dropping my elbow, going back. So now I got the heel of the blade, dragging across the stone. And as I go across the stone, now I'm about to hit right here. So I want to start raising my elbow in order to get the very tip. And then I go back and I drop my elbow. Yes. Shout out to Haram for joining the Bang Gang squad.
Haram K. Walker. Woo!
Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much for becoming a member.
Yeah, I do appreciate it. Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
So I'm going back and forth, back and forth. I have not flipped to the other side yet. I have not done the other side of the knife yet. And I am using both passes, back and forth motions. I am not just sharpening on the pull through pass or the pushing pass. I'm sharpening on both passes. As long as you can hold an angle, it doesn't matter if you push or pull. They're both the same. Sometimes, like in the future, when we do V grind, you might want to only push or pull. But when we're doing convex, we want to push and pull. All right, we got a burr.
Oh, I didn't even see Dennis was in here. Sorry, I didn't notice.
You're fine.
I'm sorry.
So now we're going to switch to the other side after we read this. Everyday EDC, thank you for the 5 bones. Glad you're doing these things, homies. Thank you, man. I do appreciate the donation. I do appreciate all the support, you guys. Thank you guys so much. So now we're going to get to the other side. Now, I'm pretty good at matching my angle, but what I'm going to do is I know how big my edge bevel is on this. And let me clean this blade really quick.
You know, Dennis, I don't think so. If there is a way, I don't know. I can certainly work on that for you and see if there's a way. But as of right now, I know that that's the only link I'm able to acquire. Using links in Europe, because technically I think they have a different form of Amazon, and like the websites change in different countries a little bit. So
if you click it, it should just go right to your style of Amazon.
I don't.
If not, then it doesn't.
No, it probably wouldn't, because they're associated with the servers that they're using over here.
I'm just saying that we can't change it.
No, yeah. So, as far as we go, we can't change it, but I can look into that situation and see if there is something I can do about it.
Okay, so I know my edge bevel, the size of it on this side. So what I want to do is when I put this side on the stone, I want to make sure that my edge bevel is about the same size and looks the same as this side when I first start. So I'm going to take a couple passes. I want to take a look at it and see where my scratch pattern is
heading. Would you like a sip of coffee?
Yes. So I can see my angle's a little too high. But I only did a couple passes, so I just might need to do a few more passes, but I have the feeling that I need to drop it just a little tiny bit. Not much. Remember, a little is a lot when we're talking about sharpening, especially with angle. Remember, I'm moving the stone in my hand and the blade. You don't have to. You can leave the stone firm in the hand and only move the blade if you want, because you're going to wind up moving it a little bit anyways. And that is what's going to help you convex. All right, there we go. That is a great match right there. So I'm going to try to keep that angle. Now, I don't want to now, after I've done that, now I pretty much know my angle. I want to make sure I do at least 20 passes before I lift it up. If you only do like 2 or 3 passes and lift it up, when you get really good, you can do things like that. But what will wind up happening is you're just going to change your angle 100 times. Every time you lift it up, you're going to change your angle a tiny, tiny bit. You're going to lift it up, change your angle a tiny, tiny bit. So in order to make sure you're going to get the same angle from heel to tip, keep the blade on the stone for a little bit. Do like 20 passes and then check. 20 passes, then check. 20 passes, then check. Yes, baby.
Don't look to the side, Ed. Also, thank you so much, Robert Oak, for the 2 bones. How'd I do? Was that good?
That was awesome, baby. Thank you.
Dennis, just buy them European and drop a donation. Oh, like the affiliate? That's not quite even, I don't think. I don't think that works because he would be literally paying more. But
what?
Robert was saying instead of doing, just buy the stuff from his European version of the site and then give us a donation.
That's hilarious.
But then
we
he
would appreciate that, but you don't have to do that, man.
Yeah,
Just
because you'd be paying more. Affiliate links work because you guys don't have to pay more for the products and it benefits us.
And I just want you guys to have the sharpening.
Yeah,
supplies,
that's what it's
about. If it doesn't benefit us, it's perfectly fine, guys. You guys just being here and hanging out and supporting, through that is perfectly fine. Just drop a like, leave us a comment. We love it.
Hey, it is Bees Blades.
Shout out to the Hive. What is it? The Hive. The Hive. Shout out to the Hive.
Well, that's his fans. He's not the Hive. He's the dang king bee. Okay, what's up, Jared?
He's a queen bee. Don't let him fool you.
I'm trying to read the
comments.
Okay, what's up, Jared and Kara? And Night Fam. I'm listening while I work just to hear the... What word is that?
Just
dual say. Oh, the dual say tones of Neeves and a good diamond stone. I don't think I said dulce. The dulce tones of Neeves.
What was the question?
And the good diamond
this is looking
stone.
Really good, guys.
It wasn't a question, it was a comment. Well, sometimes I do comments.
Okay.
Sometimes I read out the comments for you because you're not looking towards the screen, so I gotta help you out.
All right.
But seriously, I don't know what that word is. It looks like it says dulce. Like it looks like dulce in Spanish is sweet.
The sweet sound of the stone.
So it must be dulce in Italian or something. It must be Italian.
So remember, we're looking for a slight convex. We don't want it to be like this. We want it to be more like this or like this, or actually more like this.
Yeah.
Where it looks pretty close to a V grind. Like looking at the difference between a V grind and a slight convex, they're very similar. You almost can't tell.
You know what it's like? It's like if the letter U and the letter V had a baby.
It's just like that.
Yeah.
So looking at the difference between a slight convex and a V grind, it's so similar. It's going to be hard to tell. But so you're basically going to try to get it as V ground as possible. But since you're doing stone in hand, blade in hand, it's going to be very difficult to get a perfect V grind unless if you have a ton of practice. And at that point, you're already going to know the difference. So, and you're trying to get it as close as possible to a V ground as you possibly can, like this, which will result in a slight convex usually. And like I said, after so long, when you're that good where you can distinguish between the two, you're going to know anyways. Yes, baby.
Tyler Payne wants to know, Jared/Kara, so I guess we can both answer. What would be your limit you would spend on a production knife or custom, either or? So what would be the absolute limit? Let's do it on a production, because custom knives, we're not like deep in that game.
Up to like 800 maybe, but
what's your limit on a production?
Which we haven't done, by the way.
Yeah, we're not really deep in the custom game, so I feel like production would be like the one to answer. So what was your beer limit?
500.
That's your
550,
max.
Probably 500, maybe 600. I mean, if I really, really love it, I would probably spend 550. Maybe 600. I spent 400 on this. So, but it's not often we spend $600 on a knife. This was 400.
Yeah, I would actually probably say my absolute limit to spend on a production knife would be $600. if it was like a one of like something.
It's your style. It's everything.
Yeah, like if it matches the bill perfectly.
Like I really want a Roosevelt, a Rosie.
Yeah.
And I would spend, you know, $600-700.
Just to be clear though, I would never spend
more.
that money though if the knife was on the secondary. I would only spend that money if that's actually what the knife cost. I would never spend $600 on a production knife that was marked up because it was on the secondary.
See, I would if I know it's also going for a lot more on the secondary. Like the Rosies go for like $1,000 on the secondary. Right. So why wouldn't you spend $600-700 on it?
If somebody was charging a good price on the secondary, I'm saying like, for instance, like those Brian Nadeau knives, those Riat ones, I forget. The micro typhoon, is that what it was? I can't remember, but whatever it was, they were like $300. They were Riat OEM, and then on the secondary, they were going for like $625, things like that. That's what I'm saying. Like my budget might be $600, but I would never spend $600 if that was the scenario.
Unless if it's something you just have to have in your collection because you have every other one, something like that. Bama Knife Guys, part of the Bang Gang squad.
He stopped peeking through the window and climbed on in.
Shout out to Bama Knife Guy.
Hey, Antimatter says, hey, Jared, aren't you basically doing a micro-bevel?
Nope. Micro-bevel would be if I've already done my edge bevel. And then, so say if I do my edge at this angle and I'm completely done, right? My edge is all done at this angle. Then I finish at this angle and I do a little micro-bevel on each side. Or if I take a ceramic rod at the very end. I've already got my edge. My edge bevel is perfect on both sides, but it's at this angle. And then what I do is I come back and I hit it at a high angle like this. That is a micro bevel. A micro bevel is just a very high angle at the very apex of your edge. This is a convex edge. So we're taking and rounding our edge in order to make it a little tougher so you can put a low angle on your edge without making it fragile. Because if your edge is like this, it's going to be very fragile, right? If it's like this, it's going to be a little tougher. But in order to get it like this, so you can get the cutting performance, sharpness, edge retention, etc., you can slightly contour the sides and make it tougher. So now it's not going to be as fragile, but you're going to get the cutting performance, the sharpness, etc. benefits. Yes, baby. Everyday EDC with another 5 bones. Did you want to say that? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll read the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm good at that. When polishing your edge, do you prefer to go super high grit stones or use strops with compounds? Obviously, the end would be a low micron strop compound.
I prefer, honestly, to use stone. The reason why is because on my stone, I can get a super high polish while still keeping the bite I want at the very tip of my apex. When I strop, you have more likely of a chance of polishing off the teeth that you want. Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, because you can. And there are times where I say I go to a very high polish or a very high grit, and then I just strop my way to the polish. There's times I do that, but by choice, if you know, I would use the stone, go to the polishing stone, and then I would do the least amount of stropping at the end, which would be just a few passes per side on a very low micron polishing, you know, gunny juice or something like that on a strop. That way I can keep and hold the bite at the edge instead of polishing it off. Yes.
I just wanted to pop back on that subject really quick about the buying knives numbers. To be very clear, we don't regularly spend that's our upper like limit. If it was perfect, yeah, we rarely crack 200 on a knife. Rarely.
250 is usually about our $250-300 is usually where we spend. But there are times, like, you know, that because we have to keep so many knives on the channel. So since we have to do that, we have to spend that much anyways, but we try to get more content on the channel. Right. Now, of course, if there's something special that I know will be good for you guys, good for the channel, and we want, then yeah, we're gonna shell out the dough. And then we can always sell it in the future or test it and then lose a little bit. But yeah.
Okay, Tyler Payne says, how would you compare an Oz versus like a Shiro F3R, a CKF, or other high-end knives? Like, how does it compare and what makes it exceptional? I've never handled one.
So they're completely different knives. The Oz is a smaller knife. They do have small Shiros.
I guess maybe that question was for me because I just told him I handled one, but that's okay. Go ahead, baby.
Do you want to?
No, go ahead.
So
because I'll probably agree with you.
The Oz is a reverse flicking small knife. A Shirogorov is more traditionally shaped like a knife, meaning it kind of looks like a steak knife in a way. But
I think you meant the action. Like, how did it feel?
I'm gonna get into that.
Oh, he knows what it looks like.
So the Ashuro, since it's a flipper, most of them, they do have some that have reverse flicking, but most of them are flipper deployments only. And they use just a standard detent. It's just their detents are very, very well tuned, and their flipper tabs are extremely, extremely comfortable. The Oz uses a double detent system. It has 2 ceramic detent balls in the lock bar, so it has a very crisp reverse flick. So one is a super crisp reverse flick, while the other one is a great flipper action. And one's running on multi-row ceramic bearings or multi-row bearings, and the other one's running on just standard bearings. They're both very smooth, but they're just completely different. 2 different animals. It's kind of like comparing a Spyderco Para 3 to a Sebenza or something. They're 2 different animals. I'm not saying that those are like those knives. I'm just saying it's like comparing those together. Okay, so we have a burr from heel to tip. Now, when you're in the beginning and you're first learning, so I can't, really quick before I finish what I'm saying, I need to get a little bit lower edge bevel on the tip of this side. It doesn't match this side. This side's bigger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue working on this side. And as I get to my tip, I'm going to kink my wrist a little bit like that, but so slightly that you're not going to be able to see it. If you can notice it by seeing it, you're going too much. But in the beginning, when you first start sharpening, get the burr as big as it takes for you to identify it. But as you move on and you get better and better and better, try to get your burr as small as possible. You don't want a huge burr. In the end, especially when you start getting to your last stone, you're going to do a burr removal. You don't want a big burr. When you're removing a big burr, if it's really big, it has the potential to take steel with it that you don't want removed. When it's nice and small, it's a little bit easier to remove. It makes for a cleaner apex. Now, don't worry about that until you get really good. Make as big of a burr as you need to make in order for you to identify it. So now I'm going to get the tip. So remember, like I said, I don't want to just go on the stone and do a couple passes. So I'm going to do another 20 passes again in order to make sure I'm covering the entire edge bevel with the new angle, because even though this is pretty much the same angle I had, I might be off by a degree. So I'm just going to do about 20 passes, and as I'm doing the 20 passes, as I get to the tip, I'm going to slightly angle my wrist to a lower angle, because the tip is not as low as I would want of an angle. It's a little bit smaller than the other side, but I'm barely doing it. You probably can't even tell that I'm doing it. What'd you do? You broke your nail?
In my sleep.
Why are you breaking nails in your sleep?
I don't know. I was fighting somebody.
Damn demons?
Yeah. Broke my damn nail. It lasted all through Blade Show, though, so I'm already...
That's a win, right?
That's already a win. Yep.
There we go. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So we'll take a look at both sides really quick. I'll zoom in. Hopefully you guys can see this. I don't know how well you can see it over the camera, but... And then we'll flip to the other side.
When you're done, may I make a comment?
Yes, you can. Let me just show them this. All right. Now. Yes, baby.
Okay. I just wanted to say to Tyler Payne, who says, "Man, I've yet to still have gone to any knife show. I do really want to go, but I'll need to make sure I have the funds because there will be so many exclusives I'll need to pick up. As far as the exclusives go, get ready to camp outside if you want one of the real exclusives.
Yeah, you're gonna
straight up. Like people were camping like 2 days prior.
So,
but yeah, so
we're gonna do a burr remove real quick. I could keep this grit right now. This is about 300 grit. It's a 140, but it's been used a lot. So it's about 250, 350 grit. I could keep this grit and just do a burr removal right now, right? Which would be a perfectly acceptable edge. It worked just great. But I want to bring it up just one more stone. So we're going to go to about a 600 grit stone. I could do a... I feel how this feels. I might want to grab a different plate. I'm just getting a feel for this stone. Sometimes, just so you guys know, it might be easier for you to use a slimmer stone. For some reason, it just sometimes can work a little bit easier when freehanding in hand. I'm not saying always. Everybody's different, but I don't want... No. This is a 400. Yeah, this feels good. All right. So this is an Atoma 400 we're going to use. It's pretty new, so it almost feels a little, almost as coarse as my 140 because my 140 is so broken in. But for some reason, it almost feels like you can match the angle better on a thinner stone than you can, because you're not trying to match the angle across the blade as much. You're only trying to match the angle right here. So it feels like it's a little bit easier sometimes to repeat your angle. So just a tip, if you want to, do this in stone in hand trick, you might want to try doing it on a 1-inch stone to start. But hey, even a 2x6 might work out great for you.
I think it's easier to hold the little ones when I tried to do it like that. Oh yeah, for you guys that are members watching, I guess there's a part in YouTube where you can like see stuff from us if you are a signed up member, and I left you guys a poll there. I guess it's in the community tab and it just goes only to members. If you guys are able to get a chance to fill that out, I would really appreciate it. It just kind of asks what sort of content that you guys want to see for your members' lives specifically. So anyway,
you
just
can
curious.
recommend stuff so that the next time we do a Bang Gang Live, you can recommend something that we for sure bring up and show, so I have all the equipment ready. Now, I'm going to zoom in really quick because what I want you to see is I have the entire edge bevel hit really good. I'm missing a little tiny part of the very apex of right here at the heel. So I want you to see if you guys can identify it. I'm not sure how good it's going to come up on the camera, but...
What are we identifying?
Hold on. At the very tip of the heel of the blade, there's a little spot that's not hit.
Is it
right here?
Where?
I can't see the camera, baby.
Point to it in real life. You
I
look
just
in
did.
real life.
Okay, here, let me just grab a pen. All right, here's a knife. It's right here at the apex, the very tip of the edge, right here. You'll see it's a little bit shinier than the rest.
It's very hard to make out. Oh, wait, no, I see it. Yeah, it is.
I'm going to move back and forth a little bit. Maybe that'll help you. Can you see it or no?
Yeah, when you aim the knife more up, you can see that part of the edge stays white in the light. Now you're just out of focus.
Yes, exactly. So you can do that yourself when you're looking at it. That part will be a little bit whiter or a little bit more silver than the rest. So I have to continue working on that. So I'm going to match my angle. And I'm going to go do some back and forth passes really quick right here, but then I need to blend it.
Bama says a flashlight helps with that.
A flashlight does help.
Antimatter says I use a TSPROF when I set my angle for the knife, and when I flip, I notice the angles are way off by a few degrees. I have to work much longer on that side to match the bevel.
So yeah, you can do that. So if your angle's not matched up and like you just for some reason cannot get it to match up, just work a little bit longer on the smaller side. But if you can match it up, use an angle finder. Try to use a digital angle finder and match it up as good as you can. I got it. So yeah, just use a digital angle finder, match it up. If you need to take it out of the clamp and re-clamp it, you can do that. You know, try to clamp it on the flat parts of the blade. That's one thing. But yeah, you might even, like, as you're tightening it, you might want to put a little bit pressure on the edge to make it kind of like flex a little bit before you completely clamp it down. So I'm going to do a reverse stroke. All I'm doing is deburring. That was just me deburring. I'm just looking for my angle. When I do this back and forth motion like this, I'm just kind of finding my angle, letting the blade kind of rest into the angle that's already there. And I'm very gentle with it. I'm kind of just letting the blade kind of just naturally fall into the angle that's on it. You'll barely feel it. After doing it a whole bunch of times, you'll begin to learn how to identify it with feeling or with sound.
Kim Otterbach.
What's up, bud?
If your first stone is a regular diamond plate, can you then switch to a VENEV stone, or should you just be consistent in the type of stone? My low grit VENEV is stuck between... Wait,
repeat that question, and then
I think the last part's a statement, so I'll just read you the question.
Okay, go ahead.
If your first stone is a regular diamond plate, can you then switch to a VENEV stone, or should you just be consistent in the type of stone?
Nope, doesn't matter. So they're both diamonds.
Oh, they said the mic is cutting out?
The mic.
Why? Hello?
How's the mic now, guys? How's the mic?
Nope. There it is. Okay, I think it's okay.
Okay, so when you have a diamond plate, as long as the next grit is finer than the one you were on, you're fine. You can go from from Atoma to VENEV. You're probably not going to want to go from VENEV to Atoma, but you could, as long as it's a higher grit. But no, doesn't matter. You can switch. I do it all the time. I, in many cases, start with an Atoma and I finish with a VENEV. Like your knives that I'm sharpening for you right now, that's how I'm doing almost all of them. I'm starting with a 140 diamond plate, and then I'm finishing on my VENEVs, because I can get my VENEVs all the way up to 5,000 grit, and then I can strop on like a quarter micron, which I don't even know what a quarter micron is, like 30,000 grit or something. I don't even know. I'm not positive, but you see what I'm saying. And I know I've had your knives for a while. I'm trying to finish them up. We just got back from out of town, so I'll be talking to you very soon about sending your knives back. They are turning out really, really good, though. Very happy with how they're turning out. But yeah, you can switch however you want. I just don't recommend going from diamond to aluminum oxide or Arkansas or anything, unless if it's a simple steel. If it's a simple steel, reprofile on diamond if you want, and then go to Arkansas or whatever. But you want to stay consistent with diamonds with anything mid-grade and up, with steel quality, like with the steel quality, and it has to do with the carbides in the steel. The aluminum oxide and natural stones cannot sharpen the carbides in the steel. They just can't. This has been proven. You can look up pictures online, and the carbides just sit there. They don't get sharpened. They wind up shattering, actually. So we got this side done. I could work on the tip a little tiny bit more, but it's pretty good. It's pretty close. I'm not too mad about it, but I'm going to hit it just a little bit more just to... Remember, when
Can
I get
you
to the
repeat what you just said for them?
Which one?
I don't know, whatever you just said.
So, so when you're sharpening, and you have aluminum oxide stones or Arkansas stones, natural stones, that's fine if you want to switch from diamond to an Arkansas or an aluminum oxide.
He's asking what won't sharpen the carbides?
Oh, okay. So aluminum oxide stones, Arkansas stones, natural stones, they're not hard enough. A carbide is incredibly hard. It's almost as hard as a diamond. So since it's so hard, the natural stones, aluminum oxide stones, they're not hard enough to sharpen them. So what they wind up doing is they wind up removing the steel around the carbides. Here, I'll just draw you guys a picture really quick because this is crucial, guys. You guys got to know this, because what winds up happening is will it get sharp? Yes, your edge will be sharp, but you will lose all your edge retention. Basically, will it be sharp? It'll seem like it's sharp. It'll seem like you have a good quality edge, but you'll start cutting with it and it will go dull like that, like very fast. A study or a test was done, and the difference between diamond and aluminum oxide was 200 feet. The one only got 100 feet. The other one got 300. So anyways, so like let's say this is your edge. And these are the carbides. In your edge, okay? So this is just, imagine this is your edge. This is what we're sharpening right now. And these are the carbides. What winds up happening is the steel will get removed around them, around the carbides, but the carbides will just stay there and not get sharpened until they're popping out of the surface like this. So let's say this is a carbide. So this is what they'll look like. So the steel will get removed from around them, and the tops of the carbides will be hanging out of the edge until they shatter. And then little chips of them will come off, resulting in microchipping, things like that. But that's because the aluminum oxide stones, the natural stones are hard enough to sharpen the steel around the carbides, but not the actual carbides. Now, a high carbide steel will be riddled in carbides. So imagine what that will look like. S110V, S90V, 20CV, M390, Rex 121, Maximet, all these steels. They'll have so many carbides. So you will have a whole bunch of carbides popping out of your edge that you can't see with your eye. You need a microscope, so you won't even know it. And I actually did a live showing this, because there's a if you look at steelnerds.com, they actually show a microscopic picture of exactly what I'm talking about. And it was a knife being sharpened on a hard Arkansas. Now, a hard Arkansas would be perfectly acceptable for a simple steel or something with very, very low carbides. But anything with, a good amount of I don't even like doing it with anything with, anything medium, considered a medium level steel and up. Simple steels, yeah, that's fine. There's barely any carbides in it. But basically 9 CR and up, I personally don't like. Now, yes, you can absolutely sharpen all the way up to like S35 VN with aluminum oxide, but you're not sharpening the carbides. So it is going to result in lower edge retention. Could you do it? Yes, you can. Is it optimal? No. That's the question. What's optimal? What's the best? Did I do this? I'm just going to finish this tip off really quick because now watch my, you probably can't see it, but yeah, baby.
Bama says Arkansas was great 25 years ago when everyone was sharpening soft-ass steels on case knives.
Yes.
Because I remember Arkansas stones used to be the GOAT.
I love Arkansas stones. I have a bunch of them, and they're expensive as hell. Well, the hard Arkansas.
I think that's just because of how readily available the translucent Arkansas stones are. That's why they're expensive.
Right.
That's what I'm saying.
The translucents are very hard to get. There was only one quarry of them, and the same place still sells them. You can still get them. I have a translucent. And I
just don't think it's worth it.
It was like $80 for a little stone like this, and I love it. It's such a good stone. It's great for straight razors, 440C, 420, AUS 8, things like that. It's great for those types of steels. But once you start getting into performance steels, you need diamonds. Always use diamond. Okay, so let me be clear though. There are some stones made out of ceramic that can be acceptable. That's acceptable because ceramic is very, very hard. It's harder than the carbides. But other than diamonds and ceramic, you don't want aluminum oxide. You don't want natural stones. You don't want Japanese water stones. Those things are great for kitchen knives. Think about kitchen knives. Most kitchen knives are not made out of super steels, but our folders are. This is D2 right now. D2, you definitely want diamonds. There's just too many damn carbides. All right, so now this is going to be my finishing stone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean things up really quick. I'm going to do about 20 passes on this side just to make sure I got all the facets out. A facet is where my angle was changed, and you'll see the difference between one angle and another angle. I'm going to clean up all the facets in my edge. I'm going to do about 20 passes on this side. Then my burr is already, decent on this side. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to get another burr really quick, and then I'm going to do a deburr, and I'm going to show you guys how to deburr. Yes.
2 questions. One, what VENEV from Antimatter, what VENEV grit stone is closest to 600 grit?
The 240.
Okay, the other question is from Tyler Payne. Could you use 14C28N or Nitro V on Arkansas, or would you want diamonds for those as well?
I want diamonds, but yes, you can, but I don't recommend it.
Also, Semper, FIEDC guy, thank you for becoming a member.
We got a Spartan in the house. Give me a jewel. Mine's got already. Yeah, you can use an Arkansas in 14C. I definitely have. 14C would not be considered a high carbide steel. However, it does have carbides. AEBL, now that would be perfectly acceptable for a hard Arkansas because there's almost no carbides, if any. I don't even know if there's carbides in that steel. But 14C it came from AEBL. So 14C is basically AEBL with some carbides and a couple other things. So since the carbides are in there, I just don't recommend it. Can you do it? Yes. Will you get similar edge retention? Probably. But is it optimal? No, because you're still going to get a better quality edge, better performance, better edge retention from the diamonds. But yes, you can do it. If that's all you got, use it. I'm not saying go out and, you have to go buy a diamond stone. You're fine. You can use that and you'll be just fine. But the more you move up in steel quality or performance steels, the more you are wanting diamond. Okay, so I'm actually going to work on this side first and then go back to the side because I got such a, because my burr is kind of large. So let's do.
You got a big ass burr, boy.
Boy. And remember, what's convexing this right now is the fact that I am holding the stone in one hand and holding the blade in another. It's making it to where, since I'm doing dual passes, I'm doing a forward pass and a reverse pass, which is making it to where my knife or my edge is convexing right now. Yes, baby.
Josh says, I have a set of Shapton ceramics. How are those?
Those are good because that's ceramic. So Shapton will work just fine.
Bama just asked Kara. Ask Jay what he thinks about Shaptons. I love them, but I'd like to know what he thinks.
Yeah, Shaptons are just fine because they're ceramic. So that ceramic is incredibly hard. I forget what it's at. I think it's like 88 HRC or something like. Maybe it's harder than that. I forgot. One thing you can do is look up the HRC of ceramic versus a carbide. You want to make sure that whatever you're sharpening with is a harder HRC than the carbide you're sharpening. But yes,
do they post HRCs for stones?
Yeah. Well, no. But like aluminum oxide, we already know it does not compare to a carbide.
Right. Because it would just be the hardness
it's
of the
still
material.
very, very hard. Like aluminum oxide, like, so one of the arguments is that, okay, so a diamond is technically made from sapphires, which would be technically hard enough to sharpen, right? Sapphires, rubies, things like that. I have ruby stones. Ruby stones are great. They're hard enough to sharpen carbides, but technically those are made from aluminum oxide. That's how they're made in earth. Earth is made from aluminum oxide mixed with heat and all this other things. However, there's different levels. Just like anything. It's kind of like, think about ceramic, right? Or a cup, a ceramic cup or whatever, right? It starts out as like clay at first, right? It has to be cooked and everything else. So there's just different levels. And aluminum oxide, like at where it's at before it gets to ceramic, because technically ceramic is made from aluminum oxide. Technically, the aluminum oxide just isn't yet hard enough. Once it's ceramic, yes, it's hard enough. Now, I don't know like all the details like a scientist would be able to tell you, but ceramic would be hard enough. Aluminum oxide is not. Yes, baby.
Okay. Robert says, at the start of this, Jared, you showed two different positions on the stone, and then Bama said, explain that two-step push-pull method again. Okay. I'm with Robert. I'm trying to watch what you're doing, too.
Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm starting out at the heel of the blade. This is the heel. Tip, heel, tip, heel. So I'm starting out at the heel. I'm setting it on the stone. So now as I'm coming across the stone, I'm trying to hold the angle as well as I possibly can. I am not trying to fluctuate my angle whatsoever. The fluctuation of the angle in order to convex is going to come from the tiny bit of movement that I am unable to control because I have the stone in one hand and the blade in another. Like I said, as you become more professional and you've done this a million times, yes, you might be able to get a perfect V grind. But in that case, you know, you're already going to know the difference between a V grind and a convex. But for the most part, 99.99999% of you are going to convex because you're going to have a blade in your hand and a stone in the other. And you're not going to be able to stop that slight tiny bit of movement going across the stone like this. So it's a great way, as long as you're trying to hold your angle as good as possible, you're going to convex, even though and that's what will give you the slight convex, because you're going to hold it as good as possible. So it's going to be damn near a V grind. It's going to barely convex, which is what we're looking for. We're looking for a slight convex. Let me go back up really quick. Remember, we're not looking for a big convex. We're looking for a slight convex. Very convex, slight convex. We're going for slight convex, which is almost a V grind. This is going to be the best because it's going to increase the toughness while also having the edge retention and the cutting performance. Now, as we're coming across the stone, after we got our angle, right? We got our angle. As we're coming across the stone, try to hold that angle as good as you possibly can coming across the stone. Now, once I get to here, I am not hitting the belly or the tip. So I have to raise my angle in order to hit the tip. So as I'm coming across, I'm going to raise my angle in order to hit it. So I'm going to come across, raise my angle. I'm also going to fluctuate this a little bit to hit the angle. You don't have to, but you can once you get it down. Once you get it down, you can almost just leave the knife in one place and just move the stone. See that? Or no, I'm not even moving the knife. I'm just moving the stone. And now, once I get them both moving together, I'm definitely convexing right now. because I'm not a robot. So I'm going to slightly convex.
You're not?
Well, I try.
Okay, you have another question, my
yeah.
love.
Hopefully
Robert,
that explained. If that did not explain what you were asking, just ask me different.
Robert says one other question and I'll quit. First of
No,
all,
don't
this
don't
is
quit.
your
Don't
guys'
quit.
time to ask questions.
Yeah,
That's
I
why
want
we
you to
limit
ask.
the chat to members,
Yep.
is so that I can easily see all the questions and they can all get answered. We want them, keep them coming.
I'm here for the question.
Anyway, on the push, you're coming off the edge of the stone. Are you lifting just a bit to raise the angle by dropping on the wrist?
Okay, no. So I am not raising my elbow to hit the angle. My angle is held with my wrist. Okay, so this is my angle. The only thing that's changing when I move my elbow is me from hitting here.
He says he's watching you like a hawk.
Okay.
Trying to learn.
Yeah, let me just scoot over just a little bit.
Yeah,
maybe.
go for it.
Okay,
go for
so as I'm coming across the stone, this is the same angle here, or if I'm doing the tip, it's the same angle because my wrist is locked. Okay, my wrist is locked. So as I'm coming across, if I lift my elbow right now, the only difference is where I'm hitting it on the blade, not the angle. The difference in me hitting the belly's here. The difference between me hitting here, here, and here. But the angle is separate from that. The angle is the edge bevel. So that is this. This is edge angle. This is depending on where I'm hitting on the blade. So where I'm hitting the blade, the angle, right? So I'm locking the angle on the stone. Now, as I'm dragging it across, I'm going to hold that angle as best to my ability as possible. So I'm going to hold that, come across it without moving this way. I don't want to move this way at all. I'm going to come across the stone without moving up and down, come across the stone, but now I'm not hitting the belly. So now I need to raise my elbow to hit the belly and the tip. You get it? Yes, baby.
When you're ready, I have another question.
I'm ready.
Do you have to block me out with the chair still?
Nope.
Okay. I was like walled out of the live for a second. Okay. Antimatter. Is it necessary to lap VENEV diamond stones? I have a silicone carbide grit kit, but not 100% sure what grit to use for what stone. So,
really doesn't matter. So if you have an aluminum oxide stone, you can use that to clean the VENEVs. So you see this one's really dirty. If I have an aluminum oxide stone, I can use that to clean it. So if you have the silicone carbide powder, you can, I have a video on that too. The silicone carbide powder, you're going to sprinkle it on a piece of glass, put a little water on there, and then you're just going to clean it off. Now you're still, even though that is the way to recondition, reflatten, relap your stones, right? That's the best way, is the silicone carbide powder with a little drip of water and a piece of glass. The piece of glass is because it's perfectly flat. That's going to reflatten your stone and clean it off and expose the diamonds. The point is the resin, when you've used the stone a lot, the diamonds have been knocked off, have been broken down, and are under the surface of the resin. So you're going to lap it in order to bring the diamonds back out of the surface, right?
You said that camera angle is really good.
However, you still want some sort of stone, like an aluminum oxide stone, some sort of conditioning stone, even like a silicon carbide stone, some sort of stone. So in between you lapping your stone on a piece of glass, you have something to just clean it off really quick. And what that'll do is it'll help clean the diamonds and help knock some of the resin off that's around the diamonds to expose a little bit more in between lapping. Yes.
Q1 Fiend says, when using your diamond stones in hand, do you use them dry or with the soapy water?
I like using, so if they're diamond plates, I personally use them dry. You can use them with lubricant. If you do use them with lubricant, like soap and water or oil, they will last
You
longer.
do that when it's in your actual hand, like the palm of your hand? Because that's what he's asking you.
Well, that's what I'm explaining right now.
Okay.
So diamonds, I always use dry. I use them dry just because it's less messy. Should you use a lubricant? Kind of. You should, just because it helps them last longer. However, it's not doing much because diamond plates don't get impregnated by the metal. You can just dust them off. The metal just sits at the surface, you just dust it off and you can keep going. So as long as I'm using actual regular diamond plates, I use them dry. If I'm going to use my VENEVs, then yes, I use lubrication no matter what, even in hand. So diamonds, I always use dry. VENEVs, because they can get clogged, I use a lubricant.
Okay, Robert wants to make sure he understood the answer before, right?
Yes.
He said, so basically I want the metal left behind off the stones and a bit of fresh plate for the next run.
Yes, you always want to try to keep it as clean as possible. Now, there's going to be times where there's going to be metal on the surface, so just keep it as clean as possible, because that's going to make sure that the diamonds are able to hit the steel and not steel hitting steel.
And then
But diamond plates you can just dust off.
Bama wants to know, which I would imagine the answer is yes, but if all of his edges are slightly convex, if he only sharpens plate in hand, wouldn't they be?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, most
likely.
Listen, you can, listen, I can do a perfectly flat V grind edge. If I do it in hand, no matter what, I cannot get. Now, I'm not saying you can't, because when you've done it a billion times, yes, it's very possible you can get a perfectly flat V grind. Is it probable? No. If you do plate in hand with knife, you're going to get what I call a slight convex, even if you're very, very, very good. Like me, I can get a perfectly flat V grind edge, but I cannot when I have it in the hand. I get a slight convex. Now, if I put the stone in a clamp, yes, I can get a perfectly flat V grind. But once I put the stone in my hand, that little bit of fluctuation is what's giving me the slight convex. And I am very good at doing a perfect V grind edge. So I would basically say that most people, 99.999%, are going to get a slight convex just like me, even if you're really good at getting a V grind.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get some 20 passes on this side really quick, and then we're going to do a deburr.
Deburr.
So what you want to do, though, is right now, what I'm doing is I'm getting rid of all my facets, which are all the discolorations in my edge bevel, showing that I did different angles. So I'm going to do at least 20 passes, basically making sure that my grit is hitting from the top of my edge bevel to the very tip of my apex, from heel to tip. From heel to tip, from the top of the edge bevel to the very apex, I want my grit pattern to be nice and uniform.
Is that
I want all the scratch pattern to be going at an angle. I want basically looking like a perfect serration. If you ever see an edge bevel where everything is perfect, you just see a nice scratch pattern. There's no facets. Facets are where you can see the reflection of different angles shining back at you. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm making sure mine's nice and clean. Everything looks nice and uniform. The grit pattern is nice and even from heel to tip.
You mean like the little lines you see on the edge,
Yep.
like when you shine it in the light? So if those are not all facing exactly the same direction, they technically hit a different angle?
Right, and also without other angles shining light back at me. Like right now, if I decided to just do a couple scratch really quick, without doing it back and forth, if I just go, you're going to see a whole bunch of marks all over my edge, or a bunch of facets, because of different angles. So right now.
But are you evening out that part too with the little white thing towards the edge that we were looking at close up before?
That was because I didn't hit it yet.
Okay, got it.
I'm learning because I'm going from the top of the edge bevel to the very apex. So now my scratch pattern is all running at an angle. Let me just show you guys something really quick. I'm going to show you guys exactly what a facet looks like and what you're trying to get out. So let's say this is your knife. This is your edge bevel. Okay, this is the knife, right? This is the edge. This is a choil, right? So I want my scratch pattern to look like this. The reason why an angle is better is because that means the serrations in the very tip of the apex are facing towards what you're cutting. So this is what you want your edge to look like. You want your grit to all be going at an angle. Why not straight up and down? Well, you could. Straight up and down is fine. That's more like a factory edge, though. Factory edges go straight up and down because it's a belt that sharpened it, and the belt was going straight up and down. When you freehand, you're most likely going to get them at an angle, which is good because each one of these lines is a little tiny serration at the edge. And you want, just like a saw blade, you want those little teeth to be facing what you're cutting. When you cut like this, right? So you want these teeth to be going the same direction you cut. Now, what is a facet? So a facet is where, say, like if this was a perfect edge where all the grip patterns go in the same direction from heel to tip. So, or sorry, from the heel of the blade to the tip of the blade, from the top of the edge bevel to the bottom. So all my scratch pattern is going from the top of the edge bevel to the very apex, from heel of the blade to the tip of the blade, right? A facet will be like where you'll have a little mark right here going this way, a little mark right here, maybe going that way. Maybe this is a little cloudy right there. Maybe right here you have a little cloudiness here. Your scratch pattern might be going this way here. Those are facets, right? Because it's not perfect. When you look at it, you see light reflecting back right here, a little bit of light reflecting back right here. It's not perfect. Your scratch pattern is not perfect from heel to tip, from the top of the edge bevel to the very tip of the apex. So I'm going to do 20 passes at the end to clean it up and make sure all these little tiny imperfections are gone. So I'm going to hold it in hand and I'm going to get about 20 passes back and forth without lifting. I don't want to lift my blade off of the stone for at least 20 passes. That way I can make sure that my angle is the same across the edge bevel and I'm not lifting up and changing my angle again. I want to make sure this is the same angle because it's the last angle.
Ow. Do you typically like to do your edge, the little edge angle pattern, a little bit backwards towards the handle too, or do you like them straight down? You know how you can see the on the edge? What angle do you make those go?
I don't understand that. The question.
Like
it doesn't matter. Whatever you can do as long as it's.
I'm saying, what's your preference?
It doesn't matter. Whatever
for the way it looks.
Doesn't matter as long as it's at an angle. Because it's just going to be however you're canting the knife. So
I'm just saying,
I'm going this way. So like if I went this way like this, that's fine. If I went like this, that's fine.
I like the way it looks when it's like on an angle like that, though, rather than when the lines look more straight up and down, as we were talking about in the chat. And I was just wondering if you like. It
doesn't matter as long as it's at an angle, like a saw blade, like serrations. Think about serrations being your edge. Your edge is serrations. It's just micro serrations. So you don't want, like, not saying there's not good serrations that are straight up and down, but what's better? VEF serrations, right? What's better on a saw blade? Like, yes, there are saw blades that have teeth that go straight up and down, which is perfectly fine, but that would be you going like this, straight back and forth, rather than at an angle. I say you're cutting like this, so you want your teeth to go facing towards what you're cutting.
That's the way I like them. That's what I was saying. That way.
So now we're going to deburr. So let me just check my facets on this side.
See you later, Bama.
Bama, see you later, brother. Thank you for joining and hanging out with us. So I do have a couple facets on this side. So I'm going to do about 20 passes on this side. Then we're going to deburr. Right now, my burr is on this side from heel to tip completely. I have a nice burr from heel to tip. So I'm going to knock that off. And I'm going to do 20 passes really
Dang,
quick.
Q1 Fiend coming in clutch. He said, you can see those scratches even better with a jeweler's loop. Search for one using Jared's affiliate link. And then he posted the link.
Man, why don't you grab my jeweler's loop?
You want? Where is it?
In the second little drawer in the knife cabinet.
Okay, I will be right back.
No, it's right there behind you.
Oh, never mind. I will just turn around.
Second drawer. Second middle drawer. Middle drawer. Little box drawer.
A little round box.
Yeah. I could get my magnifying glass because I did buy that for you guys. And next time I'll have it ready for you guys, okay? I do have a magnifying glass that I can show you guys that you guys can look at, so we can show you all this on a magnifying glass. Next Bang Gang Live, I will break that out. Give me that one. So now I have another burr from heel to tip. Now I need to do a deburr. So let me deburr, and then we're going to take a look at this edge. So the way I'm going to deburr now is I'm going to do a very, very... Yes, baby.
Question when you're ready.
I'm going to do a very, very light pass on this side. I'm going to hold the angle. So what I'm doing is I'm not putting as much pressure as I was before. Okay. I'm going to set it down very gently though. And I'm going to do a very gentle pass. And I'm going to feel it. I still have a burr. I'm going to do another gentle pass. I'm not trying to disrupt. No, I don't want to put facets on there. I just want to knock off the burr. Now, you can do this with a ceramic rod, too. So I can take this ceramic rod, and I can very, very lightly, because I don't want to create a micro-bevel. So I can just very, very lightly allow just the burr to drag across. I can do that. That's another way I can deburr. Still there, so I'm not... I need to raise the angle up a little bit, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on the stone. So... the ceramic rod is perfectly fine, though. It does not matter. Not enough pressure to create any facets. Oh, there we go. Now we got it to turn. Okay, so now I'm going to go back and forth. Very, very lightly, though. No pressure. Let me deburr, baby, and then we'll get to that.
It's kind of just a yes or no question about something happening.
Let me do this, though.
Okay.
So I have to go very lightly, back and forth. No pressure. All I'm trying to do is get my burr to snag the diamonds. Single passes. You basically want to do the one side until the burr flips and then do a back and forth. So my burr was on this side, so I did a couple passes until it flipped over to this side. Then I started doing single passes. So now we got it pretty much cleaned up. There's a little bit over here. So, and then we're going to clean up the rest. We're going to get 90% of it with the stone and then the other 10% with the strop. Yes, baby.
Antimatter said, can that cloudiness also be caused by deep scratches from a coarse stone?
The cloudiness is from a change of angle, not from because the coarse
He's
stone.
saying, can it be caused by that?
It is from the stone, but it's from the stone changing angle. So you're already doing a scratch pattern. The scratches are always from the stone, but you want the scratches to all be uniform, going the exact same direction across the edge. When you change angle, then what happens is your scratch pattern changes a little bit. So now it's not going to be perfectly from heel to tip, all running the same direction. It's going to be like this all of a sudden. It's just going to have a little cloudy spot. It's just your angle changed. So I'm going to do a reverse pass really quick like this. A couple of them very lightly. Give me 1 second, baby. I'm basically stropping on the diamond. That's basically what I'm doing right now. Because all I'm doing is trying to remove the burr. But this is so gentle that I'm not disrupting my scratch pattern because I'm just barely snagging the tips of the burr. Yes, baby.
Robert said to tell you to try something. He got the idea from a hugely respected blacksmith. The blacksmith uses a piece of cardboard to remove the burr as if it was a strop. Like
there's lots of ways to do
passes.
Burr. Some people take wood. They take wood and they go like this. They take a piece of wood and they go like that. There's ways to do it. There's so many different ways to deburr. I'm just doing it this way right now to show because I could show 20 different ways to deburr right now. Right now, I'm just trying to show one way. So I got
I've actually done that
80%
before
of
with
it-
the cardboard at work when I had an edge that was clearly getting a burr from just like being doing the same cut over and over and over and over. So the burr started really leaning towards one side of my edge. You could straight up feel it. And I actually did use a piece of cardboard because that's all I had on me. And it worked. It worked.
The one thing though is I would say that especially if you're at a coarse grit, depending on your grit, like if it's a finer grit, using a piece of wood is great, or cardboard or something like that. But when you're very, very coarse, you can use the wood. That's fine. But the bigger your burr is, you might want to diminish it first, because the bigger the burr is, the more likely if it tears off, like through the wood, if you scratch it through the wood and it tears off, the more likely chance you have of it taking steel with it. So diminish it first, get it as small as possible, then do it. So like right now would be a great time for me to do that because I got my burr very, very small.
Ugh.
I know you didn't like that.
What was that? Sounds like
that was through wood.
Okay.
It's pretty good. Right here, I have a little tiny bit of burr. This is because it's such a coarse grit. Now, this, I wouldn't be having so much trouble with the burr right now. The steel might be a little soft too. That's definitely probably a thing. So the steel feels slightly on the lower side of HRC. It's not bad though. It does not feel bad whatsoever. It just feels like, you know, it's probably not a very high HRC.
Is it a potential chip or exposed carbides, basically?
No. But I need to get a little bit more off right here. So most of it's all gone. I can just feel I have a little tiny bit of burr right here. So all I'm going to do is, and I could move up to a lower or a higher grit, but because it's such a coarse, what I was trying to say, sorry, because it's such a coarse stone, the teeth and the burr is much larger. So it's going to be possibly a little bit more difficult to clean up. If it was a finer grit, if it was 600 grit or 1,000 grit, it'd be even easier. It's 400 grit. This is a pretty coarse edge right now. So I'm going to use the ceramic, and I'm just going to barely touch it so lightly. I can do it with 2 fingers. Very, very, very lightly. Now it flipped over to this side, so I'm just going to like that. I'm trying not to create much. There we go. I'm trying not to create a micro bevel, and now I'm going to strop. Now, if there was a lot of burr left, you would see my leather getting scratched. Especially this kind of leather. If it's this kind of leather, no, you're not really going to see scratching. But this kind of leather where it's nice and supple, or nice and soft and flat, you will see scratches on the leather. Which is fine. And if you see that, that's fine. Just keep working it until those go away. Until you don't see the scratches on the leather anymore. This is I could be using 6 micron. Actually, you know what? I'm going to move up to 1. That was a 1/4 micron. I'm just going to move up to 6. This is 6 micron on this one. There we go. You can hear it a lot better.
Ugh.
A little bit coarser. She loves the sound of stropping.
I really don't like the sound of stropping on like a dense strop like that. Like it just, I don't know. I just don't like it.
Let me just clean it up.
I don't mind the soft leather sound.
Yeah, she don't mind the supple leather, but she don't like that.
Yes,
flat
Robert, you do want to pull when stropping, not pushing.
Yeah, never push because your edge will go into the leather. You want to do a reverse stroke. So you start at the tip. Now there's 2 ways you can do it. You can just start at the tip, hold the angle, and as you're going across, now I need to drop my elbow in order to hit. Remember, this is just changing what part of the knife I'm hitting. The tip, now this is the belly, and then if I'm over here, this would be the flat section. This is your angle. So get your angle, then start at the tip with your elbow up, and as you drag across, now you need to start dropping your elbow. And then you can also do a reverse J, which I like to do. A reverse J helps you get the tip. because as I go like this, it helps get the tip of the knife.
That's how Jerad taught me to do it, and I found it helpful because once you get done, like if you're new at sharpening and you get done and then you go to strop, you want to do it like you were sharpening, and so it feels kind of like awkward, or at least it did for me. So the J thing was helpful for me to remember. Oh, okay, Robert, I see.
Very coarse. But that's what I was looking for because this is D2. I say the best grit for D2, I say is 600 grit. I did 400 grit on this, which is a little bit more coarser. And one of the reasons why is because I'm going to be testing this edge. And I'm not going to really be looking for too much edge retention, but I'm basically doing it for cutting performance because I'm testing this for videos and stuff. So I want a good quality edge for me to do some good cutting with. The edge bevel that came on it was a high degree angle, which it was fine, but I want better cutting performance out of the knife, so I wanted a lower angle. Now I know I'm going to resharpen this pretty soon, so I'm not too worried about putting a 600 grit or a 1000 grit edge. I just want a good, nice, coarse edge that's going to work great for cutting through cardboard and straps and things like that. But you can hear nice and coarse. Hear how coarse that sounds? I want to check it really quick. We're going to do one more piece of paper because I just want to check it from heel to tip really quick and listen for anything. Pretty good.
Hey, Denise, if you're listening, Dennis, I always say your name weird. I'm sorry,
Dennis.
Dennis.
To this, baby. Hold on a second. From heel to tip. So what I was looking for was any type of tearing, ripping, or where it would maybe get a little louder or catch. See how it didn't catch? It was perfectly all the way. So that means my apex is good. I deburred good. There's no burr on there because you can see it. If I caught on any burr, it would have a little tiny tear in the paper, and you'd hear it, see it, you'd see it catch. Also, you can see my apex is nice and clean because it's going through nice and it's not tearing, ripping. So very good quality edge. Go ahead, baby. Sorry.
Nothing. I was just telling Dennis if he has a question, if he could reformat it because I wasn't quite sure. Oh, he's saying yes because he talked about removing the burr. Mm-hmm. I had an old question in my head. I think Jerad said in an old video that's important to recognize the burr as fast as possible. Is that correct?
Recognize the burr?
As fast as possible.
Yeah, well, I would say yes. So not so much if you're just beginning. If you're just beginning, get whatever burr is large enough for you to identify. But try to start learning how to identify it because you don't want a huge burr. Now, your first stone, yeah, whatever size burr that is required in order for you to completely finish your edge on both sides to get to the next stone. But as you move through stones, so not your first stone, but your second, third stone, you want to try to make sure your bevel is as small as possible. Like I said, though, if you first started off and you're just learning, make it as big as you possibly need to identify it. After you know how to identify a burr, and you know exactly when a burr started, and it's, try to make it as small as possible. It'll make it easier for you to remove, and it'll actually make your edge keener. That is kind of like a little trick to getting those ridiculously sharp edges is, being able to identify a small burr and, keeping your burr small, because then it doesn't take much to just imagine this. Here's a really quick way to look at it. Imagine we have two knives. One of them has a burr this big. The other one's that big. So one of them has a burr this big, all right? when it comes off, it's possibly going to remove microscopic steel with it when you remove it. The other one is very tiny, right? When it gets removed, it's going to be a little bit easier to just cleanly cut right off. Now, like I said, though, do whatever works for you in the moment. And, things like burr size, you're going to get better and better at as you move on, because the longer you do it, you're going to easily be able to identify a burr, like without like even barely touching it. You're going to know, yep, that's a burr. Because what's even more important, or not more important, but one way to really know is what we were looking at when we did the grip pattern. When you have, so this is how another way you can tell. And this is why I always say, people say, what's the most important part? People will argue that the burr is the most important part. I would argue the grip pattern is the most important part. People say follow the burr. I say follow the grit. Let me show you what I mean. Again, we have a knife. There's the choil. There's the edge that we're sharpening. There's the grit. So remember how we did the knife before? This is the choil. This is the edge bevel. Here's our grip pattern. So this is what we're doing. We're taking a diamond plate and we're creating serrations in the edge, right? If you can see that your grip pattern is at the top of the edge bevel all the way to the very tip of the apex, and you can see there's no facets down here at the edge. It's literally all the way to the tip of the apex down here, then you have a burr. So you could not be doing it right and still have a burr, because you could. So say if we started at a high angle, right? Remember, a high angle is when we're holding. Let me grab a different knife that I haven't sharpened yet. This would be a high angle, right? Low angle, high angle, right? If you started sharpening at too high of an angle, you know what you would see is this. Scratches down here. But not up here, right? So if you started at too high of an angle, you would see scratches down here, but not up here. You want to make sure your scratches is from the top down to the apex. Now, what's most likely going to happen if you're starting at a low angle or a good angle is your scratch pattern is going to start up here. That's good. Start your edge up here. So as you start going across the stone, this is where you're going to see the scratch pattern begin. And as you continue working on the stone, it's going to slowly but surely go lower and lower and lower until it gets to the apex. And that's what you're trying to do. So as you start on the stone, you're going to have a scratch pattern at the top of the edge bevel. The longer you're on the stone, the scratch pattern is going to move closer and closer and closer to the edge. Once it hits the tip of the edge, the apex, that's when you have a burr. So again, when you first start getting on the stone and you're first hitting your angle, you're going to be hitting the top of the edge bevel. That's what you want. So you're going to continue sharpening, continue holding that angle. The longer you hold your angle, it's going to work its way slowly but surely down to the edge. You're going to watch it slowly but surely. The longer you're on it, it's going to slowly but surely. And then once that scratch pattern gets all the way down to the very tip of the apex, you got a burr. Now you know you have a burr, and you can pay attention and look at the apex to look for any spots that are missing. Like say if we have it all right here and we've got a good scratch pattern all the way across, but one part right here is not quite hitting, right? We have a good scratch pattern all the way to here and from here to here, but right here, kind of like we were talking about earlier, where the heel of the blade wasn't getting hit, then we can tell we need to hit right here still. So right here does not have a burr. All of this has a burr. All of this has a burr, but right here does not. So we need to continue working on our edge, continue with the same angle. Don't try to change angles. Don't try to change anything. Just continue going across the stone exactly as you are until this scratch pattern makes its way down to the apex. Yes.
2 questions, okay? Robert is asking, if you had a mirror polished edge, could you potentially hide the inconsistencies in the pattern, the grit pattern?
No, the more higher you go in grit, the more your facets and imperfections will be revealed.
And you
can
have
hide
to go
it with,
high grit for a polish, right?
yes, high grit means
okay.
polish. So the higher the grit, the more polished you're going to get.
Got it.
So the lower the grit, the more you can hide things. If you want to be able to hide things, you want to coarse.
I feel like it would be opposite.
Why?
Because a coarse would like show scratches
would you
in
see
the
a
edge
scratch
more.
if I took a rock right now and threw it at a mirror? Would you see it better in a mirror or in a pile of gravel? A pile of gravel, you wouldn't see it. But a mirror, you would, because it's a mirror.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Remember, it's a scratch pattern.
Okay.
It's a scratch pattern. So if I threw a rock at a mirror, you would see the scratches better than if I threw a rock at a pile of gravel.
Makes sense.
Right? A coarse edge is like a pile of gravel. A mirror edge is like a mirror on your wall.
Okay,
we're gonna
wait. Two more things. You're behind here. Okay, Q1 feed. My heels never bite like the rest of the edge. Did I just get lazy and not check that part of the edge for a proper burr?
You weren't on the stone long enough. You need to spend more time. And yes, sometimes okay, so that's the hardest part. The heel and the tip is the hardest part. And it's usually by the heel. The reason why is because the steel gets thicker. And this is why I have such a problem with plunge grinds, guys, is because they'll make the thickest part right here where it winds up becoming fucking ridiculous to get the whole edge bevel, right? That's why I always say, move the plunge grind back. Anyways, but yes, it's just a little thicker in that area, so you just need to work longer on the stone. That doesn't mean you need to change angles. Doesn't mean you need to do anything else, but continue doing exactly what you're doing for longer. You might have to work a little bit longer at the heel, like instead of doing the whole knife, just work a little bit longer at the heel and then blend it in. Work a little bit longer at the heel, then blend it in. Yes.
Okay, also,
I want to get a
thank you, Dennis,
thank you,
the
Dennis.
2 bones. And also,
I want to get this
and seriously, thank you very much. And then also, I think I know the answer, but why do you not like mirror edges as much? Is it just because they're not as much of a working edge, not as sticky?
I love mirror edges. So mirror edges are only good on certain steels. Certain steels do very well with mirror edges, but certain steels do not, because it gets slick. So the steels that do well with a mirror edge, I love a mirror edge on it. But a lot of steels don't do good with a mirror edge. What happens is they lose their bite. They become slick. And instead of them being like a saw, they wind up becoming like a wire. They're not, there's no bite to them at all. So you want to do the best grit and angle and edge for the steel that you're using and for what you're doing. Like that's why a 600 grit is always going to be probably the best edge for just about any steel, any knife, any this, any that, because it's fine enough to do the finer tasks, but coarse enough to do the coarser tasks and have a lot of bite. But the more you go up in grit, some steels hang on to the bite and some steels get super slick.
Antimatter says, do you leave the plunge grind thick or do you grind it all the way down? Sometimes it seems too much to grind down.
So if it's too much, right? So the plunge grind, it depends on the plunge, right? Like if the plunge is hitting the edge, then you just bring the edge all the way out to the end. If there's a little tiny facet at the very apex of right there, it's not that big of a deal. Get it on the next sharpening. That's fine. But if you want to get it all the first time, then yeah, you just got to work on it longer. But it just depends on how it happens. Like this, if you look at this Medford right now, you'll notice he puts his plunges, they taper down to the edge. So this part of the edge is going to be a little bit bigger than the rest of the edge. It's going to be a little bit thicker right here at the heel than the rest of the edge bevel. And that's also where smiles come in. Let me grab the 940 really quick. Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. You can ask the question. So this is a smile, guys, right here. If you look at this one, and this one has a coarse edge too. So you see right here, right here, that's the smile right there because it's thicker. So in order for me to get my edge all the way to here, I have to hit there because it's thicker. So it's impossible for me to get my edge all the way to right here without hitting right there because it's so thick. But you see the scratch pattern on this thing though, guys? You see how the scratch pattern is nice and uniform? It's all going at an angle from heel to tip from the top of the edge bevel to the apex. And we're going to look at the one we just sharpened through a jeweler's loop in 1 second. I'm trying to get it to show up on the camera. I think it's showing up pretty good. But that's what you want your scratch pattern to look like. Kind of like a satin finish on a blade. Similar. Yes, baby.
Okay, so it's kind of 2 questions here, but I'm just going to format them into one because they're really similar.
Yep.
Basically, can you just say like 1 or 2 steels that would be good for full mirror edges, and then like 1 or 2 steels that would still be good for a mirror edge that still has bite? So basically the perfect combination of look versus function.
Yep.
What kind of steels for mirror and then mirror with bite?
We're gonna look at this here once. Let me just look at this really quick.
Over time, I have come to much prefer edges that are toothy and bitey versus the mirror polish. I used to love the way the mirror looked, and then I just, like, once I really started hammering into my knives, I realized how much more important that toothiness is.
Very difficult for me to get. Let me change.
You can see it. It's just like a little bit blurry, but like.
Hold on. I'm gonna change hands because this thing moves a little bit, so it's difficult for me to hold.
But you're
okay, so we'll just hold it at one part. So you see how the scratch pattern is going at an angle.
Yeah, you can
from heel to tip.
There you go.
Come on.
And that's how I like them, because like you said before, that's the direction in which you are cut when you pull your knife back towards you.
Let me get up towards this part. This is very difficult to hold.
You had it there for a second.
It's not those. I'm balancing like, there we go. But you see how the scratch pattern is going at an angle from heel to tip. You don't see a bunch of facets. It looks really good, nice and clean, nice and uniform. It might have a little dust on it, but it looks really good. And it stays the same way from the heel to as you move across the edge towards the tip. Now, you might see a couple little spots from where I stropped, but for the most part, it is very, very clean.
Okay, so for the question I just asked,
this is a better way to look at it because this one's such a big edge bevel, so I can easily get you guys to see this. Go ahead, baby.
For the question I asked, I don't know if you would even know the answer to this, but I asked about the mirror polish and which ones are good for mirror, which ones are good, steels are good. But wait, but then Robert said to elaborate. Do you basically just know the percentage of carbide that's good for polishing and what range is not? But I don't know if you would even know that rather than just knowing the steels themselves.
Let me just show this really quick. You see how the scratch pattern is going at an angle? Kind of like I was showing on here on the piece of paper. Well, besides the imperfections I was trying to show you guys, but you see how the scratch pattern is going all at an angle? Just like this. Now look. That's a nice clean edge bevel. Heel to tip from the top of the edge bevel to the very apex. Now, the steels, as far as the steels go. So 14C28N does really good with a polished edge. A lot of steels, it's not going to be completely about the steel, but might be about the heat treat and the HRC. So like certain steels, like say M390 20CV, the softer it is, the less quality it does at a polish, right? MagnaCut. MagnaCut does really good with the polish if it's above 62.5 HRC. If it's below 62.5 HRC, it doesn't seem like it does very well. It gets slick. It doesn't have no bite. But because a lot of times, with the quality of heat treat and HRC, you're going to have the edge stability in order for the edge to be able to maintain its, the acuteness at the apex and have bite. So with little teeth hanging out that don't get just knocked off easily, because it's not just about how good is it going to be off the stone, but it's going to be how good is it going to hold the bite after I use it once, right? Because like say S35VN, the reason why I do not recommend a polished edge for S35 is because once you start using it, yes, it might be super sharp right off the stone, but as soon as you start using it, it loses its bite very quickly and it gets down to a working edge. So I just recommend 600 grit edge for S35. Steels like 14C does really good with a polish. Steels like Crewware does really good with a polish. K390 does really good with a polish, but a lot of people like a coarse edge for K390. I personally like a polish edge. But like I said, heat treat and HRC is going to be a huge deal. 4V does really good with a polish. There's a lot of steels that do good with a polish.
So you could have theoretically like a 14C that's heat treated well and one that's bad, and that would affect how well the edge is polished.
Yes, how well it can hold bite with a polish.
Okay.
But some steels just don't do good. There's no heat treat that does good with it. Like say AEBL. AEBL does not do good with a polish. It does great with a very low angle, and the lower the angle, the sharper a polish will be and the more bite you will have on any steel. So on any steel, the lower the angle, the sharper it will be and the more bite it will have. Steels like AEBL, CPM 154, they just don't take a good polish. They get super slick. Steels like D2, it can take a bite at a polish, but it loses it very quickly. So it's better with a medium to lower grit, medium to coarse grit. But yeah, there's so many different variables, angle, HRC, all of that stuff. Now, if you want me to just paint it with a broad spectrum, yes, certain steels do not do well with a polish. S35VN. S30V actually does pretty good with a polish. It doesn't have a very long fine edge holding ability, but it still does decent compared to S35VN. And it takes a very, very sharp polished edge. Like I said, AEBL, CPM 154, 154CM. 154CM does really good with a medium grit edge. Some tool steels like D2.
I feel like you don't see 154CM as often as
it's on everything.
Is it?
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in forever, I feel like.
It's on all kinds of shit. Yeah, it's just CPM 154, in my opinion, is better. Sorry, 154CM is better than CPM 154.
Oh, I was thinking of the other one.
CPM?
Yeah.
So CPM 154, its grain structure is just so fine grained that it gets slick when you sharpen it. The carbides are very fine. It's a powdered steel. And I'm not saying all powdered steels can't get or don't take a good polish. I'm not saying that at all. Specifically, CPM 154, for some reason, it gets very slick. It's just too fine grained. It does better at a low grit. 154CM does better with a medium grit. So CPM 154, coarse grit. 154CM, medium grit. You can go to a fine grit, but you don't want to go to an ultra fine. That would explain why different people with the same steel, like S30V, put different heat treats. One will do better than the other one. Yes, absolutely, that's exactly the reason. Because some will be a higher HRC, and some will be just a better quality heat treat. Most S30V, in my opinion, does pretty good with a polish. It just doesn't hold its bite for a very, very long time. But compared to S35, I say you can do S30V with a polish, but you just don't want to do S35 with a polish. S35 can take a polish, but it loses it very quickly. And they're kind of similar steels, but I personally prefer S30V. LC200N, it does fine with a polish. LC200N does pretty good. It's not a steel that has incredible edge retention. So because remember, you still have your edge retention, right? It's so let's say there's a chart, right? Let's say this is a graph and this is your edge retention, right? Say this is the start of it. So we'll just put an S right here. And this is the end, right? So you're fresh off the stone. This is your edge retention, right? And it's the more you use your knife, the faster it goes to the end of edge retention. When you polish it, you have a very fine grit. some of them lose their fine edge faster. So you might only have this much fine edge, and then the rest is going to be a working edge. So if you put a super polished edge on there, you're going to lose your fine edge incredibly fast. And then you're going to have all of this for a working edge. Now, let's say you didn't put a polished edge on there, right? So let's say you put a coarse edge on there. Well, your fine edge might actually last a little bit longer because you have more teeth on your edge bevel. So then you'll get a little bit longer fine edge out of it. And then, after your fine edge goes away, then you'll have your working edge until the end. But the reason why I'm saying that is because if you sharpen LC200 into a polish and you notice it loses its bite and goes down to a slick edge really quickly, well, then you want a medium grit edge on that specific steel, that specific knife for your tasks and what you do. But I would say between 800 to 1200 grit is going to be a great edge for LC200N. Yes, you can put a polish on it, but just know it does not have a long edge retention to begin with. So, if you do put a polish on it, you'll most likely lose your edge retention really fast and it'll go down to a slick edge. But like I said before, to increase that, you can lower the angle, right? If you want a polished edge, you want to get the best out of it, a nice low angle will give you the best out of a polished edge on LC200N, as long as you're not chipping your edge. Hey, I'm gonna call him Ryan. Ryan, thank you for joining the Bang Gang squad. Welcome to the Kershaws.
Woo!
But if I sharpen the wrong steel with the wrong type of edge, it won't perform. So yeah, no, for sure. I get really technical with it, and I think it's important to get technical because where I made a mistake was I didn't get technical in the beginning, and I was trying to put the same edge on everything, and I wound up not liking certain steels. The same steels that I love today, I just wasn't sure. Like, 154 cm, I used to dislike it. I
remember that.
Because I was polishing it. And I didn't know that it just doesn't do well with a polish. So I'm sitting here sharpening. Same thing with like AEBL. I kind of still dislike AEBL, but not because it doesn't take a good polish, but because its grit is very different across the board from different steels. So
I remember when we would get things like shopping for a knife and you'd be like, what steel is it? And I'd say 154 cm. And there was like a period of time where you were like, eh. Like you were straight up like hating on it.
Well,
I didn't know that was why at the time.
AEBL. So what happens is a 300 grit is like a 600 grit. So imagine that. Imagine you're sharpening every knife you have to 600 grit, right? And 600 grit is great. And it does great on all steels. And then all of a sudden you sharpen AEBL and it's super slick, even though it should have a ton of bite. That's because 300 grit is like 600 grit for AEBL. So if you want a 600 grit edge on that steel, then you should do it at 300 grit for AEBL, right? But once you know all these little nuances and details with steels, then like this type of edge does best. Now, with any steel across the board, the lower the angle, the higher the bite, the sharper it will be. Remember that. Also, the longer your edge retention will be, but the lower the toughness. We'll say that again. The lower the angle you sharpen your knife to, so 17 degrees, 15 degrees, 13 degrees, the lower the angle you put on your edge, the longer your edge will last, the sharper it will be, and the more bite it will have. But the lower the toughness. The toughness goes down with every degree. And that is why, like we talked about today, why you will want a slight convex, because you're going to get the most potential out of the low angle, having the highest sharpness, highest edge retention, most bite, but you're not going to sacrifice the toughness. Go ahead, baby.
Two things. Do you have the CBM Predator out? No?
Yeah, that's what we were sharpening.
Oh, the red one.
That's what we sharpened. Yep.
Um,
This is what we sharpened today.
I did not know that was called the Predator.
Yeah,
I knew it was
Predator.
a CBM. I didn't think that was called the Predator.
CMB. Sorry.
CMB.
Yeah, CMB.
I always say that
knives.
backwards.
Yeah. Yep.
That was me.
CM. No, I got it all messed up.
I know. I always say it backwards for some reason.
CMB made knives, Predator. Am I wrong here? Polished edges will affect. Go ahead, baby, please. I want you to.
This is my only job.
I want you to read it.
This is my only job.
I know.
Okay, here we go.
Yep.
Am I wrong here? A polished edge will affect push-pull cuts if slippery. However, straight down cut performance will increase due to reduced bevel resistance. Thanks.
Yes and no. Yes, for sure. But so a polished edge, not necessarily. So I have there's a lot of edges that can be polished that will have a ton of bite. I can grab a lot of them right now. I can grab a knife right now with a super polished edge that has even more bite than another knife that has a coarser edge. And yes, one is more coarser, right? But the actual bite, when you put it to material, how the edge bites into the material, when you touch it, how it bites into your skin, that you can get with a lot of polished edges. It just depends on the steel and the heat treat. Now, yes, when you're doing a drag cut, if it's a polished edge on a steel that does not take a good polished edge and it's slick, yes, that's where you get dangerous cutting. That's where you will slip out of cuts, and you could possibly slip out of a cut and cut something else or cut yourself or something like that. That's why sharp edges with a lot of bite are so important. It's so important for your edge to have a lot of bite. The more bite, the better, because that's going to make sure that when you're doing angled cuts or slicing anything, period, you're not gonna slip out of your cut. Now, a push cut, you're just going straight down. You're not cutting at an angle. So since you're pushing straight down, the bite isn't going to be the most important. The angle is what's going to matter. But most people, you're going to angle a little bit. So like say, even if I'm going to do a push cut through a piece of cardboard, to some extent, I'm going to not just go just like this. I'm going to angle it a little bit as I push cut, right? Even if it's only a little bit, I might not be going like this, but I'm at least going to angle it a little bit as I push cut through. So you're still allowing the teeth to do some of the work. But the lower the angle, the better it will be for both. Low angles are very important when you want sharpness, cutting performance, and edge retention. But remember, what do you lose? Toughness. If there's any more questions, make sure you guys ask it, because we are about to close up in 5 minutes. So any questions, please ask it. We got 5 minutes left, and I'm going to end this with questions. Any type of questions about anything, we can sit here and answer right now while I'm not busy on the stone. We can go through it. Wise words, Robert. Wise words.
They said I got huffy. I was just huffy because I didn't get to read my question.
You're not huffy.
It's my job, and I take
to
it
be
very
huffy,
seriously.
She takes it seriously.
No,
guys.
to read the
she
questions.
She doesn't mess around. She takes it seriously.
I like to read my questions because it's my job.
Just to be clear, guys, when you're doing the slide convexed, the facets that we were talking about that I got out at the end before I deburred, that is going to be more prominent, and you're going to be able to see it a lot more the higher the grit you go. So say if I went to, I don't know, 7/5 micron, around 3,500 grit. Let's say I go to 7/5 micron, which is a polish. If I have any spots in there where I have more scratches, like dude was saying earlier, where I have I have deeper scratches from my old other stone that I did not get out, or if I have different angles that I did not hit perfectly, that is all going to show in the higher the grit you go. And like dude said earlier, the deeper the scratches are from your stones, the more you're going to want to work on the next stone in order to get rid of them. You're trying to replace each grit you're trying to replace the last stone's grit with the next stone. So if this is 140 and this is a 400 grit, I want to make sure this 400 grit completely gets rid of all of the 140 grit scratch pattern. But I want to make sure it's nice and uniform from heel to tip, from the top of the edge bevel to the very apex. And that is where you will get the nice serration. But when you get higher and you get to a polish, you're trying to polish them out. So as you move up, you want to make sure that the next stone that has smaller scratches replaces all the bigger scratches. And then the next stone with the very, very microscopic scratches covers up all of this scratch pattern. And then once I get to the polish, I want to make sure that mirror edge covers up as much as possible of the scratches. Will you see tiny, tiny, tiny little microscopic scratches? Of course you will. But get them out as best as possible. And the little tiny microscopic scratches that are left there are so tiny that at least they are uniform, right? So if there are microscopic scratches in there, they're still going to be from heel to tip, from the top of the edge bevel to the very apex, running all the same direction. Yes, baby.
Okay, you got like 3 things. The first thing is you're going to show the edge again. And while you're showing the edge, I'm going to ask you the other 2 questions, okay?
Do you guys want the one that you can see really good or the one we worked on? Because
I
this
think
one's
Bama
big.
wants to see the one you worked on.
Okay.
Because he was gone. Okay. And while you're doing that, there's 2 questions. First question is, Jared, have you tried the Fox Yaru? It might be my new favorite Italian folder. The S90V feels good also. Hope they make a flipperless version. We have not tried that.
So this is not the one I just worked on, but I did work on this one recently. I'm going to show you this one so you know what to look for.
You haven't tried that knife,
No,
right?
I have not.
Yeah, no, we have not.
Not that I can remember.
We have not tried that knife.
So this is what you want it to look like. You want it to be nice and uniform from the top of the edge bevel to the apex, from heel to tip, all the scratches running the same direction with no facets. Come on. See how everything's nice and uniform, all running the same directions like serrations.
Okay, your other question.
Now, hold on a second. Now, this one's smaller, so it's more difficult to see because it's not as thick behind the edge as the 940 is. Come on.
Were those Flytanium on
yes,
the...
Yes.
Yeah, those are the Flytanium
This one's not going to be
Benchstone
easy
940
to see, guys.
scales.
It's just too... Let me try. Hang on. Let me just get the lens. Where's my little lens?
Your lens? You mean your
Bang.
Schmidt? There it is.
Oh, you know what? I could use my eyeball. Grab that eyeball.
Your eyeball? They're in your head.
Right there.
You have
the lens.
This?
Yep. Grab that. I have that magnifying glass, guys. Like I said, I will show you guys that next time. Okay, so now this is a magnifying glass. Let's see if we can get this to show up. Oh, it's a little dusty.
Thank you so much, Thor. That's very nice.
Let's see if we can get this on here. It's not bright enough, I don't think.
No, it is way too dark. You want to try this?
No, I'll just use this one because this one has a light on it.
Rectangle for you.
This one has a light on it,
dirty. Though. You clean your magnifying glasses, boy. I have another question.
Hold on.
It's like when you're zoomed in that much, it's so sensitive to your movements. It looks like you're like shaking.
Yeah, you're not though.
I know you're not.
Let me just hold it with my middle finger.
Would you like my help? Or...
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I'm trying to balance right now.
Okay, I believe in you.
There you go. Like I said, guys, I do have the magnifying glass, and we will be showing them. Remember, this is a 400 grit edge. Very, very coarse.
You can see the teeth on that
And
thing.
if you look at the 940, like I said, it's bigger, so you guys can see it a lot better. My lights are on.
It's interesting to me how my taste has changed. So, like, when I see teeth like that, that's the thing that, like, turns me on to an edge rather than, like, the smooth polish. Because I know how it feels to use it.
See how uniform that edge is?
Very. That's a super uniform edge, actually.
Well, it's bigger so you can see it better.
Yeah. No, that's...
But grab me a polished edge, baby.
Okay, which one have you done?
There's one right there. Undo that roll. Or you know what? Right here. The K390 right there. There's a K390 right there. Yep. Nope, K390. Yep. Okay. Let me make sure there's no dirt on it. Yes, there is. Give me 1 second. Let me just give it a little light duty stropping.
You have another question. Remember that.
Give me 2 seconds. Then we'll get to the questions. I just want to show this. Now, this is an edge that's very polished and very toothy. It has, well, not toothy like coarse, but it has a lot of bite. This is a very nippy edge, and it's still polished. So we'll take a look at it. But if you look at it, you can see there's smudges on it. Hang on 1 second. You can see that there's still going to be microscopic scratches.
Yeah, it's crazy how you can actually see that, but it's like...
Do you see the microscopic scratches? Well, this has been used, so don't pay attention to any of them that are facing the wrong direction because that's from just use. I've used
But I can see some that are facing the right direction a little bit.
Like those right there. Those ones are scratches that are polished out.
See you, Bama. Again.
Bama, you're just in and out.
In and out.
But
yeah,
anyways.
no, I can see those little scratches. So that makes a lot of sense because when you have a edge that has all the scratches all over the place, you're not going to notice maybe one slightly misplaced one. But then when you have a freaking perfect mirror, you're going to see that one.
What's the question?
Okay.
Scoot over so I can get in.
I thought you wanted to be close to me.
I do, but I just need to be able to get under the camera.
Okay. Well, okay. I could do that for you.
All right. So,
okay.
What's the next question?
There's 2. And try to, you know.
Yeah, I'll try to.
Okay, this is from a little while ago.
Yep.
Because, you know. Anyway, so Robert said, so the aim here is to reduce the depth of the serrations in your grind pattern. Is that correct?
I don't know what you mean by depth. So if you mean the scratches.
Depth, like he said your aim is to reduce the depth of the serrations in your grind pattern. Like them being like having depth to them.
So that's if you're going finer grit, yes. So the thing is with a coarser edge, the teeth are going to be closer together and more aggressive. But when you have a finer edge, they're going to be more spread apart and finer. So picture this. If this was the very apex of your, actually it'll be running at an angle. So it'll be like this. This would be the very tip of your apex on something that's coarse. Something that's finer would be more like this. But they still have bite. And it's still very, very sharp. And since it's flatter and there's not as much of this going on, it actually can cut into materials, a lot of materials, even better. A lot of people think a coarse edge, which it is in some cases, can cut even better than a fine edge, but that's not the case. A lot of it has to do with the angle. The lower the angle, the sharper, the keener, the better it'll cut, the better it'll pass through materials, the better it'll bite into materials. The higher the angle, the worse it will do. The lower the angle, the better it will do.
Okay, next.
Yep.
Because we're super behind now. Why did my little Battle Horse Knives fixed blade come from the factory with 0 bite whatsoever? Is that typical of BHK? Also, why do men have nipples?
2 things. So one, I don't know if it's typical for that company, but I would say that what they did was they overstropped. They probably have a buffing wheel, and then after they came off of the belt, because remember, they don't sharpen on stones, they sharpen on a belt. So what they did was they came off of their belt, and then they hit it on a buffing wheel, which buffed all the teeth out of it. And men have nipples, so we can flex our chest muscles. Go ahead.
What? How does that help?
I don't know.
I think men have nipples because, why Why do men have nipples? Doesn't everybody start out as a girl, or does everyone start out as a boy? You know how the XY chromosomes when you're in the womb? There's one gender that everyone starts as, and then you form from there. I think everyone starts as a girl.
Girl, yeah.
So that means that would have to mean the first thing a baby grows in the womb is nipples, and then you go from there.
Well, the Lord made boys first, and then girls were made from boys. So
I'm saying like the XYXX chromosome. I think all starts out
I know what you're saying.
girls.
Right, that's probably why.
Yeah, or maybe
then the female hormones are what makes your titties grow, and the male hormones is what gives you more muscles.
Do male dogs have nipples? Right? Like, do male animals still have nipples?
Yeah.
It's not just like a weird human thing, right?
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, ding, ding, ding. Josh, thank you for the 5 bones. What angle and grit would you sharpen Afghani Damascus?
I would stay away from every Afghani Damascus possible. I probably wouldn't even want to sharpen it because it's super duper soft and it's probably not heat treated correctly. So that's probably going to be the most difficult thing you've ever sharpened in your life is going to be Afghani Damascus, but not a low angle for sure, because a low angle is probably going to be very fragile and it will roll and chip and everything. So probably a high angle. So probably something 22 degrees and up. And grit, I would keep it a coarse grit because you don't want it too fine because it's just going to lose bite. So something coarse between 300 and 400 grit at something high, 22 degrees and up.
Q and Fiend said men have nipples because we have the genes to form them, but the ones to make them work are deactivated. That's kind of along the lines of what I was
just
saying.
said. Exactly.
Yeah, like
exactly
you start that way, but then you turn into a dude.
Yeah. And then since you have the female hormones, you grow nits, and guys have the testosterone, so we grow muscles.
Antimatter makes a great point. He says, in my experience showing my knives to non-knife people...
I thought he was going to say nipples.
It's showing my nipples to non-knife people. No, just kidding. Showing my knives to non-knife people are more impressed with the mirror edges than the knife itself. And I completely agree and know what you mean. Yeah. And that's why I was saying that back in the day, I used to always tell Jared, like, put a mirror on it. Because I didn't really know better. And, like, I wasn't knowing...
But that's fine on certain steels. Certain knives, certain steels. It's great.
However, in my experience, and if you guys don't know me, I really, really, really use my knives a lot. And so in my experience, I would notice even a knife that had, thicker geometry would still be a better option for me with a toothy edge versus something maybe a little thinner with a polished edge. And does that always follow? No. But in my experience, like, you can actually just like feel the toothiness when you're cutting with it. That's why you hear the different sounds in the paper.
Well, also, don't let anybody make you think that a polished edge is bad or that a toothy edge is better. It just depends on what you cut, what you like. If you like a polished edge, with a lot of bite that's very, very ridiculously sharp, the sharpest edges I've ever felt were probably a polished edge. I can't really say that because I've had some 600 grit edges are probably the sharpest I've ever felt. But polished edge, though, man, I've had some polished edges that are so damn sharp, it's like scary sharp. Yeah. They might even be the sharpest I've ever felt. It's hard to really say which one was sharper, but if you want to get that high polished edge, then you just want to get certain steels especially from certain companies. Spyderco is one of them. You get certain steels from Spyderco, you can get yourself some incredible polished edges with a hell of a lot of bite.
Robert was like, "You don't like knives?" Shows nipples to confuse situation and escape.
Look at that. Look at that. Do you hear how quiet that is?
Yep.
And this is a used edge. This is very, very used.
Do the sound for them.
Well, I want them to see it too. This fucker will cut you deep if it cuts you.
That's polished.
And it's used. Yeah, but it's very...
polished, but it's still toothy, ain't it?
It's got a lot of bite, yeah.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of bite, but it's K390. K390 holds on to a lot of bite even with a polish, but it's very used though. That's what's crazy. This is very used.
Q and Fiend brings up a good point that I think a lot of people, when you're going down this path of logic, you might start to think. Would a toothy edge be more likely to tear paper on a straight paper cut test, even though it's really bitey and has a great edge because of the microscopic little boop boop boops?
Not if it is perfectly uniform. So if the grip pattern is nice and uniform and the edge angle is good, even like I've done hair whittling with a 600 grit edge before. It just depends on the angle. So if it has a low angle, even if it's a coarse edge, and it does not have a burr, so a clean apex. If the apex is clean, then no, it will cut perfectly straight through a piece of paper. This one, like this one, might be a bad example because it's been so used. But let me grab a really coarse edge with a this one has a couple hang-ups because I've used the heck out of it. But let me grab one that's got a super toothy edge, and I'll show you.
Knife Nut 69, there are a bunch of links in the description currently. Jared, what would your favorite or your best recommended replacement set of stones be for the TSPROF?
VENEV.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
VENEV and Atoma.
VENEV and Atoma. We should have both linked down below. Definitely VENEV though. But all into the description for you. And Robert says he can definitely hear the difference in the sound. For those of you that weren't here earlier, we cut a toothier edge through paper, and you can hear that the tone, the actual sound itself through the paper is going to be different compared to a polished edge, which sounds a lot lighter, quieter, because there's literally not as many teeth, and so it makes less tearing noise. Robert, when it tears, it's usually a burr imperfection. Yeah, absolutely. If you're cutting through your paper and you get a tear all of a sudden, it can be human error, but it could be a burr or some level of an imperfection, roll, whatever. It's anything like that.
It's usually a burr. I think... Oh, you know what? No,
that was the CMB Predator. And it actually reminds me of the... oh gosh, why did I just forget their name? The Shadow, the TRM Shadow. That's on it. Look, if you don't know what that knife is, look it up. The knife is a literal budget TRM Shadow. But I can understand how you see it as a shaman though too.
This one's been used a lot, but here I'll just use it as an example.
That's exactly right, Robert.
It's a pretty toothy edge. This one's probably 600 grit.
Toothy.
But I've used it a lot. But you
that's
can
why
see
it's catching a little bit. A little bit of catch.
Yeah, well, like I said, I've used it a ton.
Maybe give it a little strop.
No, I'm just gonna. I can grab a different knife. I got everything like packed up in boxes. That's why it took me a second. But
yes, I am officially back, Knife Nut. So I'm here to stay.
But you can see how clean it cuts, even though it's super toothy.
Yeah, and the pitch noises make sense when you think about it logically. If you think about the edge on a microscopic level, and you think of a smooth edge as having less microscopic imperfections, or
the cleaner the apex,
it's going to be quieter. And then the ones that are toothy, if you're thinking on it like microscopically, it's going to have a lot. I don't want to say imperfections because it's supposed to be that way, but you're going to have little microscopic depth differences in the steel. So when you cut through paper, it literally is making microscopic tears, and that's increasing the volume of the sound or the pitch and making it, lower. Because it's also the volume, not just the pitch. It's like louder and quieter. You know what I mean? Like the toothy edge sound much louder because it's literally micro tearing.
Here we go. This one's pretty fresh, and it is a toothy edge. This is a high angle too. This isn't even a low angle.
It's a high angle tooth, y'all.
Push cutting. Push cutting. Push cutting.
So much louder. It goes.
But you see how clean it is though?
Soup's clean. Because it's really good at grabbing the material that it's working through. It has a different superpower, if you will.
Right.
you know, mirror edges are really good at slicing through things, but the toothy edges are really good at grabbing the material and moving forward.
Well, it's just cutting cleaner.
That's the way I like to
it's
think
a cleaner
of it.
cut for a polished edge. But even the toothy edges, you can see, like this is a super toothy edge with a clean apex. So this is a polished edge. This is just a little quieter. Not by much though.
No, that
because this is such a clean apex. Like,
oh my gosh, that would be so funny. Antimatter was like, I want to send some of my knives to Jared so he can grade my edges. You should totally do a video where you have people send in their edges, and, like members or whatever, and then we can grade them.
That's not a bad idea.
That
And
would
then
be
I can
super
tell them
fun.
what to do, what they're missing, what they're not doing, what they can do better, or their problem. Like if they send me an edge that they have a problem with, and they're like, what am I doing wrong? I can literally show you on camera. And if you don't want your name said, I don't have to say your name. I can literally just talk about it with no name.
No, that would be a pretty cool as in terms of like a video idea. That would be really fun.
Thank you, Fiend. I appreciate it. But no, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. If we could get like a couple participants.
Yeah, Robert, a lower tone. Yeah, you definitely. It's one's more of a high pitch and one is more of a lower tone for sure. Absolutely.
See you later, knife nut. But yes, it makes sense that you have a better time, you know, getting results when you understand, especially like the science behind things. I'm the same way. I need to understand the why, not just the how. That's why sometimes Jared will say something and you'll hear me ask like what might seem like an obvious question, but it's more of a clarifying question, because he could say the same thing 8 times, but I'm not going to retain the information in my brain or be able to retrieve it later on if I don't understand the why. And I mean, even when you know, I've worked in industries where I'm training people a lot, and that's like step number 1 when you're training or teaching someone something is always teach the whys, because the whys is what gives someone something to connect to in their brain.
Q1 Fiend. Jared opens a box of my edges, immediately flips the table and starts punching the wall.
I think you added the punch in the wall part.
Do the video once a month, but members' knives only.
Yeah, no, I agree. Marketing. Keep it to members.
Oh, of course. Yeah, definitely.
Unless we only get like 1 knife, in which case we'd have to like open
well, no, that's somehow. What they're here for. They could definitely do it. And if not, do it. I have no problem doing the problem myself.
I could sharpen a knife and then you could grade it.
Right. Yeah, we could do stuff like that, which we are planning on doing. I'm going to sit here and tell Kara what to do. She's going to try to do it, and I'm going to tell her what she's doing wrong, right, what she can do better, blah, 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 blah. So, any more questions, guys, before we take off?
Damn, we've been here forever.
Very good idea on my side. Shipping is more than the actual knife, but I would do it. Yeah, if it winds up being something like that, I think even just seeing somebody else's edges, because you can definitely see the similarities. And remember, most of us are going to have the same problems, right? So if you see an edge, and I do it under my microscope, because remember, I have that microscope that I bought for the members so I can show you guys stuff. So we'll pull that out next time. But if that edge looks very similar to the edge you have, then the result on fixing it is going to be the same. So if you just listen to what I say about that one, then you can fix yours. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for coming today. I have to get out of here. I have food that I got to grab really quick. But I love you guys. Yep. I had a great time answering your questions in the chat, and we do the members live every other Sunday. So not next Sunday, but the following, there will be another one. And I'll let Jared wrap this up, but I'm going to say goodbye to you guys. Thank you.
Yes, Fiend, thank you. Yes, don't forget to use the links. I try to I usually don't link a lot of sharpening stuff in videos that have nothing to do with sharpening, but if you just find videos that are about sharpening or sharpening, you know, videos, whatever, I link all the sharpening supplies, things I recommend. Look for those videos. You can find everything you want. And if you ever have any questions about that sharpening stuff or whatever, you can always ask. And yeah, so thank you guys for showing up. Fiend, thank you for all the work you do. I do appreciate you always helping out, and I appreciate everybody showing up. I appreciate all the support. To the patrons, don't forget, you guys do have a giveaway video coming up very soon, so watch out for that. Love you guys. Thank you guys for everything. Peace.